Welcome to Podrassic Cast.
Great.
I had to do it.
You could have done the Goldblum. That's what you didn't go for.
Yeah.
You could have done a Goldblum.
Well, it has been established on the show over the years that my Goldblum is particularly awful.
Oh, interesting.
In my pantheon of bad impressions,
Go on.
Goldblum might be second only to Arnold Schwarzenegger.
You're very bad at Arnold Schwarzenegger.
How's your Wayne Knight?
Let me see. I'm going to work on it.
Whoa.
Is Wayne Knight 100?
I'm trying to get... He's got a very particular rasp. That's hard to approximate.
He's inimitable. I mean, which I guess is why Wayne Knight was Wayne Knight for the 90s.
I'm going to say, putting a pin in Wayne Knight's ginormous 90s.
I mean, just when it was like, you can't say get me a Wayne Knight type. It's like, get me Wayne Knight or
true.
we're rewriting this character.
I would argue Josh Mostel was in the mix there for the Wayne Knight part.
Oh, yeah,
he
absolutely.
was, but fucking, I mean, the degree to which Wayne Knight Bigfooted him.
He did. He edged
Josh
him right
Mostel
out.
probably has like a voodoo doll of Wayne Knight.
Josh Mostel had the Nepo juice and he had a head start, right? He's in movies starting in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man.
And he's got an iconic dad, and yet Wayne Knight just said, like, come on, give me
I
space.
fucking forgot about Josh Mostel, man. And it is...
We just watched fucking Jesus Christ Superstar.
That's right.
Which he's great in.
He sure is. And then you just look, and the 90s, the early 90s
Sandler.
in his career, Sandler's using him. He's in City Slickers too. You're like, he's in both City Slickers, obviously. Like, you know, this is great. And then you're seeing in the 90s, you're like, it's kind of tapering off. And then the 2000s, it's like he was in 2 movies.
Right.
It's over.
Because what happened?
I mean, I don't know.
Knight.
Wayne
That's what
Knight, I
happened.
guess, just market corrected him to use
market
an expression.
corrected him. That's right.
There's the story I love that when they were casting this movie, when they were planning it out, that Spielberg saw Basic Instinct.
Right.
And the shot of Wayne Knight sweating profusely.
Yes. The interrogation scene in which
in response to
she uncrosses her legs.
Sure.
He
Wait,
is
what?
She does. You gotta look closely.
What happened?
This is why you got to go 4K on Basic Instinct. Because the first time I saw it on TV, I went, what is everyone getting so worked up about?
But he is, when you're looking at all the guys in that scene, he's the one where you're like, who is this fucking guy?
And the
He
story
is
has
so
always
sweaty.
been that Spielberg watched it and went, T-Rex cut to that reaction shot, that's a blockbuster. That he was just like, that's exactly what we need is that guy's response. Which is funny because the movie doesn't even really do that.
No,
His
doesn't get that
characterization
moment.
ends up being so different than that.
He also, the only man truly focused on Wayne Knight in Basic Instinct. I mean,
Right.
for that to be your takeaway.
Yeah, Spielberg's like,
Curious
Sharon,
choice.
who?
What vagina? But the idea that he like saw that one cutaway reaction shot and was like, we can build a blockbuster around that.
Spielberg magic, baby.
But that's also fucking Wayne Knight magic.
Okay, but when we're talking about Jurassic Park, and we should introduce our
A
guest
Wayne
before
Knight
we start.
film, as far as I'm concerned, a Wayne
No,
Knight
but that's
vehicle.
the thing. It's not. Every single actor in this, when they are on screen, you're like, man, Sam Neill owns this fucking movie. And then like Sam Jackson's on screen, you're like, I forgot that Sam Jackson has never been better than in Jurassic Park.
Right.
And then we cut to someone else, and I just feel the same way every single time.
Not to crib like rewatchables terminology, but this is
Well, I
a
already
hard
did it.
movie to put through the rewatchables categories.
Yes,
Have you
I
guys
did it
done
once
it?
and failed terribly.
Did you guys do
We did do an
JP?
episode.
I think
But
we
you're
did.
like, are there like 20 Apex Mountains in this movie?
Well, everyone is perfect, right?
Yes.
So it's one of the most perfectly cast movies of all time, plus one of the most consequential
Oh, yeah, you did it with
artistic
Shoemaker
movies of
and
all time.
Bryant,
Yeah,
right,
Shoemaker
yes,
and Brian
right,
Curtis and I
right,
did
right,
it.
right,
And
okay.
I think we actually forgot to even say the name John Williams in the pod.
Right.
So like,
I
if we
mean,
were doing it today, it
yeah.
would be a 9-hour episode.
Right.
But there's a lot to go through here.
There's a lot to go through here.
This movie's good.
It is
It's
good.
good.
It's really good.
It is good. It is funny that like I'm putting this forward as a theory, okay? 1970s, 1980s, 1990s. In each decade, Spielberg makes a movie that basically breaks Hollywood's brains
Yes, is the
trying to replicate
the
it.
definitive blockbuster. I mean, I guess Star Wars is the definitive blockbuster of the 70s. But
What-
Jaws, Raiders,
This
Jurassic Park.
Well,
is
because
what
we
you're
were
saying.
talking
Right.
about we did our Dune episode on David Lynch. I should just say quickly, this is Blank Check with Griffin and David. I'm Griffin.
David.
It's a podcast about filmographies, directors who had massive success early on in their careers, say making Jaws
Sure.
as their second or third film, depending on how you count it. And we're given a series of blank checks to make whatever crazy passion projects they want. And sometimes those checks clear, and sometimes they bounce.
Hook, baby.
Sometimes they hook, baby. This is a miniseries on the films of Steven Spielberg, the early years.
Mm-hmm.
We're using early pretty liberally.
Spielberg origins.
Spielberg origins.
How many kids does he have when he makes this movie?
Great question.
Let's find out.
2?
I mean, that's, I feel like, the most defining aspect of this film relative to the earlier Spielberg blockbusters is this is now a father.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. This
Protection is what's
is
most
a
important.
dad movie.
Yes.
I mean, it is, especially when you read the book, which I assume you have.
I did on a beach on Long Island in the 1990s, and I thought hard about returning to it for this, and I just didn't have the time.
I assume, Griffin, that you have not.
Correct.
Ben, did you ever read Michael Crichton's Jurassic Park?
No.
A book that I had to hide under my bed because it was so scary.
Wow.
I remember that very profoundly. Like, I read the death of Dennis Nedry in that book, which is very violent in the book, much more violent than it is in the movie.
He gets killed by Sharon Stone's vagina.
Honestly, that is something Michael Crichton would write. We can talk about that in a second.
We'll talk about that.
And I did the thing, like the joke in Friends of Joey putting The Shining in the freezer. Like, I put the book under my bed. I was like, I can't even have the book near me.
Wow.
I'm so freaked out. Anyway, what was it? Oh, the kid. Yeah. There's not as much overwhelming, like, these kids, we have to protect them in the book that I remember. Like,
Sure.
The kids are more of an irritation.
Well, and that's the closest thing this movie has to, like, an emotional spine.
Right.
Is Alan Grant's journey of learning to tolerate children.
Yes.
Starting the movie
Maybe
as a
even
guy
like them.
who's like,
Right.
I could never have kids. And by the end is like, I get it.
Right.
He
Yeah.
learns how to tolerate children and use, like, seatbelts correctly and so on and
Right.
so forth. Right.
It's not a very Spielbergian book.
No.
Sure, there's spectacle, but aside from that, man, it's a mean book.
His books are fucking mean.
The Crichton books are
I
nasty.
like Michael Crichton books
Yeah.
as, like, fun things to read, but I recently reread Sphere because
Yeah.
I have twin babies and I'm just reading a lot of books on my
Humble
phone
brag.
right now.
Yeah.
Not a humble brag.
Reading books on your phone?
That
That takes
part-
good eyesight.
That's a humble brag.
How hard are you zooming in?
And Sphere
When
is
you
one of
raw
those
dog
books.
in that thing.
Obviously, that was in a moment of his life where he could fucking write a book called, like, I Took a Shit, and his editor would be like, I can't wait to get this on every bookshelf in America.
Sure.
But, like, if you submitted Sphere to me, I would just immediately reply back, like, do you have a problem with women? What did they do to
Right.
you?
I think I Took a Shit was the original title of Disclosure, as I recall.
I mean, but talking about it not being a very Spielberg-y book, which
Right.
I just have to take your word for here, it is one of the infamous parts of this movie of, like, this is, like, the most white-hot pitch
Right.
to hit Hollywood, like, arguably ever.
He had 2 children, by the way. You're correct.
There
Okay.
you go.
With Kate Capshaw.
And they, like, throw it out to all the studios as a jump ball, and every studio goes, like, here's our pitch for what we would do with this text, and has their own director attached. Warner Brothers makes a play with Tim Burton. Columbia makes a play with Richard Donner. Fox makes a play with Joe Dante, and Universal and Steven Spielberg.
I'm obsessed with this fact.
Amazing
Obsessed.
to think about all 4
Yes.
versions.
But all of them
Right.
make sense in that way where
course,
you're
of
like,
course.
here's the book as this, like, median object, and then you could take it further in any one of these directions.
Okay, wait, we all love this movie, right?
Yeah.
When we
Yes,
all
although
agree.
I'm going to call Griffin out as not being a Jurassic Park super fan.
It's not totemic for me in the way
Yes.
I think it is for the three of you. It
Okay.
is a movie I have certainly over the years grown to appreciate more and more and
But
more.
you were never really a JP boy in the same way.
I wasn't
think.
a JP boy. I think that's the key distinction. It wasn't one of my movies growing up.
But
Do
we all
any
are
of those
positive
other
on the
3
movie.
sound better to you?
No. But, well, the Dante one is the one that kind
It's
of.
very intriguing.
But
Yes.
it's. And I say this with due respect to Joe Dante. That is a fun, silly, trashy movie.
you know what he did instead of this movie?
Was it
Matinee,
Matinee.
which is one of his
Good
best
movie.
movies.
Great movie, but so different in terms of scope and energy than what
Right.
JP is.
Yes.
Like, the Burton version of this movie does not appeal to me particularly. That's just kind of an interesting, like, well, what would that look like?
yeah,
Donner
also,
would have made a slightly worse version of this movie, probably.
Donner,
Agreed,
I think,
agreed.
probably would have made the more Crichton-y version,
Yes.
wouldn't have pulled it further into his own voice. Donner's the
Probably
most
not.
sort of like,
Hired hand.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
Donner
like,
grounds
expert
things in
studio
emotion.
craftsman. Yes.
Exactly. He's a great studio filmmaker. He does spectacle just fine. It would probably be
He would have made the most
a
Crichton-y
really
version
fun
of it.
movie.
The Dante thing's interesting to me because I have long contended that in particular Jurassic World feels much more like a Dante homage than a Spielberg homage in a lot of ways.
And-
yes, it also is meaner than this movie is.
Totally.
So
Which feels like a misread of Joe Dante's anarchic humor.
yeah, Yeah.
Right.
The Burton, I mean, like talking about all the sliding doors here, Burton misses out on this, then is like, oh, fuck, but I would like to do a dinosaur thing.
Mhm.
Then Warner Brothers gets the rights for Dinosaurs Attack, the Topps trading card series.
Right. And that's how he
in
found
a bundle deal
Mars
with Mars
Attacks.
Attacks. And
Right.
they were like, let's do both of these. And then after Jurassic comes out, he's like, I shouldn't fuck with dinosaurs. Let me just do Mars Attacks, which I think we all agree is like better for the culture. That Spielberg makes
Right.
Jurassic and he makes Mars Attacks. It's better that Joe Dante makes Matinee and
Sure.
Spielberg makes Jurassic.
Like, Joe Dante has made movies about critters run amok.
Yes.
So, like, yeah, I just wonder what but like, I just would love to see a Joe Dante Jurassic Park.
Joe Dante
or a
would've-
Jurassic movie.
Yes.
Like, what if Joe Dante had made Jurassic Park 3? You know what I mean?
well, that would
Where it's like, hey,
been
you know, can you just play in the sandbox and make a silly, fun movie that's like not too, we don't have to worry too much about like getting this book right.
yeah.
Because like Jurassic Park 3, which is a movie we both like,
Yes.
is that. It's just, hey, Joe Johnston, you're good with creatures. You can do some action. Keep this movie fun and light and, you know, blockbuster.
But Dante would have wanted to dig into the corporate element. He never
Definitely.
would have made why am I fucking what's Attenborough's character's name?
What's whose character's name?
Richard Attenborough's character.
John
Hammond.
Hammond.
Thank you.
Yeah.
He never would have made John Hammond cuddly.
Well,
He would have made him
absolutely.
funny.
John Hammond is a mean fucker in the
Yes.
book. He dies in the book.
He
Spoiler
does.
alert for the
Yes,
book.
he
Being
does.
eaten by compies who are not in this movie, but they're in the sequel.
They're
and thinking,
saving their stomach to eat Peter Stormare in the second film.
but as he's
Yeah.
dying, he's thinking like, fucking kids fucked all this up. Like he's mad about like the stupid kids that he brought to Jurassic Park.
I think all the clamp shit in Gremlins 2 is in a way a vision of what he probably would have done with Jurassic.
Which I don't. It's still ultimately like when you look at the obvious inspiration for that character in Gremlins 2, Donald
Yeah.
Trump. Like it's ultimately pretty
Who?
benign, you know. I said it. I said his name out loud on this
But
podcast.
this is the key difference between, without calling out names, the director of Jurassic World and Gremlins 2, where you're like, the satire in Gremlins 2 feels pointed without feeling like nasty.
The thing is I would argue that Jurassic Park is probably the hardest corporate satire / I don't finger pointing that Steven Spielberg's ever done.
I agree
And
with
it's
that.
right on the precipice of him becoming a genuine
CEO.
Hollywood corporate titan.
Yeah.
100%.
Fascinating that he would. I mean, he is John Hammond in this movie, is he not?
Let's call it another thing. At this point in time, I've said some variation of this stat many times on this podcast, but he signs a deal when Universal decides to transition from backlot tour to like full theme park, which obviously escalates with Jurassic, but when it's founded, it's like E.T. ride, Jaws ride. Like we're building this on the back of the Spielberg library. His deal is it's like 10% of all revenue every year in perpetuity, and they can't break the contract. So by the time he's making this movie and Universal's making the play for it, part of it is like, and then we can fucking put this in the parks.
Does he still own a piece of that?
Yes,
So he's getting that Halloween Horror Nights money.
correct.
I'm about
All
to
of it.
be there in like
All
a
of
week.
it.
Can't
Every
wait.
park, every country.
Wow.
It's like so here we are on this podcast. We obviously, as we I'm sure discussed before,
Our guest today is Sean Fennessey,
Hi.
the
our
big
guest is Sean
picture.
Fennessey, the King Sean.
King Sean.
People
I've
like
changed my
King
name
Sean?
to John Hammond. Which I'm
You have a
really
little
excited about.
walking
Sean
stick.
Hammond?
We've talked about Steven Spielberg on this podcast before, his later part of his career when he is a CEO, and then
Yes.
when he's sort of an emeritus exec who still like gets that sweet Transformers money, but is mostly just like, I always wanted to make a musical and I've always wanted to remake, this. And like,
There have been a couple of these now with like, it has happened only because of like Big Figures Entertainment also getting into product lines where you have your like Rihanna's with the Fenty and the fucking Jenners with makeup lines or whatever.
Just Galba.
He for a long time was one of the only like entertainment professionals who was also a billionaire. And it was because of all these deals that he's making money off anything connected to Men in Black, Transformers, things he didn't even direct,
Right.
not to mention his own properties, not to mention Universal Studios deals, like all this shit.
He leveraged something that very few filmmakers ever did, which is that everyone wanted him to make their movie.
Yeah.
And so he would grab a piece of it, even
Yeah.
if he had no intention of making it, so that he could produce it forever. Which,
Yes.
maybe only 5 people in the history of movies would be able to do that in the first place, but he did it at the highest level of capitalism.
I would also argue that for a long time, for several decades, his name above a title as Steven Spielberg Presents, even if no one was
Steven
tricked.
Spielberg is associated with this movie in the vaguest way. People are like, oh, well, then must be pretty good,
People
right?
weren't even being tricked in a like Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas way. They were just like, he's co-signed this. That's good enough for us.
We were raised on that.
Yeah.
Is he the first director's name you knew?
I mean,
probably.
I think without a question, right?
Yeah.
Like,
was the shorthand guy is the guy you make jokes about. You have to like pull a name of a director that anyone knows. But also like in the 90s, like half of the shows on Saturday morning, like television, the cartoons are Steven Spielberg Presents.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Animaniacs, Tiny Toons, Freakazoid. Like he had like 10.
Totally.
Crazy.
There's deeper. I could get into Toonsylvania and Prehysteria, but that's a whole other episode.
So, Jurassic Park. I just your point. Yes, I do. This is in a way. I'm looking at his later filmography. The most sort of nakedly spiteful about like capitalism and the sort of future of business.
He never really does that.
I think Ready Player
One
does that a lot.
And I think that these two movies are capstones. Right?
And I think Ready Player One, he is more like him at the other side of it, feeling a little jaded about what he hath begotten,
But
like,
it's also,
and
right, yes.
the Mark Rylance character being like, I just wanted to entertain people. I'm really sleepy.
David?
Can you go outside sometimes? I can't do his voice.
You know he doesn't say it that clearly. Even if you don't have an impression.
I was kind of go outside maybe. Like,
are you ready,
and
Player One?
People criticize Ready Player One for like, oh God, they like, how dare this movie like invade The Shining and turn it into a video game level? And I'm like, I think Steven Spielberg is aware of what that's doing. Well, some people might disagree with me.
I was going to say the characterization of like, capitalist culture. I feel like this movie is inflating what he starts with Jaws, but Jaws is so micro, a town, a mayor. It's not like a full multi-layered corporation. It's not this idea of like spiting God. And
money is a big concern, but in that movie, it's more about preserving what already exists.
Right. Yes.
And this is about growth, expansion, reimagining what our life is and what the lifestyle of entertainment can be. So like they are definitely in conversation with each other. But this movie, even though Richard Attenborough is so warm and grandfatherly.
Yes.
Everyone in the movie is like, what the fuck is your problem, dude?
Yes.
What are you doing here? This is a horrible idea, except for, of course, the blood-sucking lawyer.
Right.
Who even, look, rewatching this, it's like, that character is far less two-dimensional than I remember him being.
Gennaro? Yeah.
Every time I'm watching it, I'm like, oh, he's like a real person. The last couple of moments are him being shitty to the kids, which gives you just enough leeway to want to see him be eaten.
You're right. It's sort of a bit of a permission structure for it to be okay that he dies. And Ariana Richards saying he left us is quite, it really cuts, to the bone a little bit. Like her shrieking that, you're like, Jesus. Like, even though you're also like, there's a fucking T-Rex. Like, what's he supposed to do?
Like, compare that to the
way Alan helps and all that. Right? Like,
I was also going to say, like, Bridezilla personal assistant in Jurassic World, where you're like, Gennaro's like a person. He's a human being.
Running away is a human reaction that is somewhat understandable.
Here was my contention I set up and have failed to resolve in the first 20 minutes of this episode. No, it's my fault. Please, I can't finish the thought. We did Dune on our David Lynch series, right?
Wow, that was a while ago.
Yes. Excellent episode. John Hodgman.
Get out.
He really brought the heat.
Hodgman,
I love this show. I told you guys that.
Well,
this is like my favorite show.
Your Big Picture is my favorite show. David, what's your favorite show?
The
Rogan?
Low Post.
Rogan?
Yeah, Rogan.
Shapiro? I don't know. Who are your guys?
Producer Ben's
WTF?
Sleep Time podcast. Shapiro.
I'm sorry. It's Talk Tuah.
It's out at this point. Talk to it.
I'm all in on Talk Tuah.
Talk to it is. We actually we are pre-recording this podcast, and we pre-recorded a podcast because my podcast partner had a child.
Yes,
and
we're on the exact opposite end of that. This is our first episode we've recorded.
You're
in a
coming
while.
back.
Yeah,
we're off we're off together. But we recorded a pod a few months ago that has like an extended Hawk Tuah riff, right? Like literally 40 minutes on Hawk Tuah. and it's not coming out until December.
And you're like white knuckling, like will she remain relevant?
I think it's going
like,
to
will
stay
she be the
relevant.
vice president? You know,
I think it's
what,
going to stay
what could
relevant.
happen here with Hawk?
Have you guys seen the photos that Spirit Halloween, and this will be many, many months old by the time it's come out, Spirit Halloween has a Hawk Tuah end cap.
Okay.
It's not just that there's a Hawk Tuah costume, there are like 10 different products.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Jesus.
What is
We
the
live in hell.
costume?
It is, are you ready? It is like it is like an auto mechanics jumpsuit, and it's Hawk Tuah auto lubrication. Spit on that thing.
What?
That's
As like a logo. But then they also have like shirts and like fucking party like
that was
decorations.
like a meeting where they were like, we have one day to get this to store. Like we don't have a lot of time.
Because what's the costume?
It just has to
the
have
costume
Hawk Tuah
can't
on
be
it.
her because she's kind of dressed generically. We have to create someone who exists in the Hawk Tuah universe.
That was figured out over lunch.
Yeah.
That was a quick little short meeting.
That was figured out over like the water cooler.
Anyway, I assume we now work for her.
We
like
do.
by April, like
Yeah.
she owns us.
This is a Talk Tuah production.
How did we get to Hawk Tuah? Dune.
You were talking about Dune.
Dune.
Jesus. Finish that thought, please.
Yes. So I was saying that movie comes out the year after Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
And we were talking about how in the wake of Star Wars, there are very few attempts to make another Star Wars. They kind of don't start until later in the 80s. You have things like Zardoz and Krull and whatever. But people felt so intimidated by like, how do you build an entire universe like this? That even though Star Wars is obviously the most seismic film of that decade, like Jaws is the first like kind of classical blockbuster release. It sets the model and the marketing. And I do think that's the movie studios are trying to rip off more because it feels more attainable. Oh, get 3 good actors. You have one looming threat, you know, and not just the shitty Jaws sequels, but all the things like Orca and whatever. I just think that becomes more, even like the airplane movies are kind of trying to do something closer to Jaws, I would contend. And then like Raiders is absolutely something everyone's ripping off, even though E.T. is the bigger hit.
Right. But also
Eventually.
Raiders, I feel like, is them being like, I assume if you're an executive at rival studio, you're like, what the fuck? That's what people wanted?
Totally.
They wanted like a rip-roaring 30s like sand adventure? Like, I didn't see this coming. I was making a space laser play or whatever.
Right. But also that the breakthrough there is that thing Spielberg says of like, what if you made a movie that was only the good parts? Right? Like the start of the like theme park cinema kind of thing.
Yeah, my big contention about this movie that we're talking about is that it is the end of something and the beginning of something, and the thing that it is the beginning of is still not over.
I agree with that.
And I don't know when it's going to end.
Yes.
And maybe it will not end.
Yes.
But whatever Jaws started, which is, I think you described very well, which
Yeah.
is sort of like this collection of actors, this sort of high concept, often like creature or fear forward, putting you through the eyes of a young child. You know, Spielberg invents a kind of American cinema. This movie is like the absolute apotheosis of blockbusterizing movies.
Yes.
And then, because of digital created characters and figures, we're in like this, we're mired in the schmear. Like everything has just been a schmear in movies
And
ever
I
since
also-
this movie.
I think it's fascinating that like everyone else would try to chase him. And then every 10 years he'd come back and be like, I've come up with a new evolution of the thing. And you watch the response at the time and the things are becoming bigger and bigger hits, but critics are like, is he simplifying? Is he becoming more and more childlike? Is he becoming more populist?
Right.
We missed the like fucking Robert Shaw speech from Jaws. Where did the subtlety go? And then like this very year he bifurcates, right? It's this and Schindler. You're like, fucking Jaws gets a Best Picture nomination. Raiders gets a Best Picture nomination. They don't have to nominate Jurassic because they're like, oh, he is split off into serious Spielberg and entertainer Spielberg. And as we covered in our later Spielberg series that was done 8 years ago, he like has this weird split where anytime he tries to make a movie like this again, it kind of doesn't work. And his big tentpole movies tend to be the successful ones are the like Minority Report, War of the Worlds, like darker, haunted. Like he can't go back to just pure joy like this without it feeling a little, I don't know, like he's trying to
100%.
chase his
Why
youth.
do you think that is?
Why do I think that he just like not sours exactly, but curdles a little bit? Maybe because he did it better than anyone, and how could you possibly follow? But then again, he did follow it up with the Lost World Jurassic Park, and I feel like that's where he's like, you know what? Why am I trying to fucking do a better movie than Jurassic Park or what? Like, why am I trying to do that again? Like, what was I
But
thinking?
that's the key difference. That's what this is the end of, is like Spielberg is not really interested in chasing his own shadow in playing
Right.
this game anymore. And then, we are 30 years past. Everyone's still trying to figure out how to make Jurassic Park again, both literally and like generally.
If you think about his career, right? Yes, you're right. This is the apex.
Yeah.
Once again, he's created the decade-defining blockbuster.
Right.
But then he finally looked inside. He gave us a personal, serious film that's also sweeping and epic.
Right.
It's not The Color Purple or Empire of the Sun, where it's like, why are you trying to
Close,
make a
but no
serious
cigar.
movie?
Right. It was the first time where everyone was like,
reverse engineer a
you did it, you
serious
grew
Oscar
up.
winner.
Yeah.
Right. He gets his Oscar. And then it's like, okay, buddy, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
He follows it up with like, I'll do that again, Lost World and Amistad.
Right, he takes 4 years off and then just does
I'll
the same
do the
year
same
again.
thing. And
Yeah.
everyone's like, not that. And he's like, you're right, not that.
Right.
I'm going to do shit that's interesting to
Yeah.
me. It does feel like basically after
Yeah.
Lost World Amistad, he's like, yeah, I'll just, I'll follow the things that are interesting to me.
Exactly. Which
Well-
is the end of the thing. But then the start of the thing is everyone else trying to make this.
Right. But I think there's a critical thing that happens between Jurassic Park and The Lost World, which is, he co-creates DreamWorks and
Yeah.
launches the studio. He doesn't make The Lost World for DreamWorks. It's still a Universal movie.
Yes.
Of course. Right.
But I think he's making another straight ahead blockbuster because he's like, I still gotta be Steven Spielberg.
Yeah.
4-year gap, and
Yes.
then I still gotta hold on to this thing that is my iconography, my name above the title, like you were
Right.
saying. And I don't know. I've never been a big Lost World
No,
person.
it's a very
I really
flawed
don't think it's
movie.
very
Yeah.
good.
No.
Yeah.
But
We're not
I
nice
get why
about
he
it
did it. I
on
get
that
why he did
episode.
it.
We always say the same thing about it, which is it is one of the best directed bad movies of all time.
Right. There's amazing set pieces in it. I kind of love the cast of it. I don't
Yeah.
even hate the premise. I don't love the third act, but like I don't hate the, something has survived the sort of
Yes.
wild side island that's not a park. Like
Yeah.
that's cool.
Good Arliss Howard. Enjoy his work in that
Fucking
film.
great Arliss Howard.
The Postlethwaite in that film?
Yeah.
It is absolutely.
That's fine cut.
But we talked about that movie.
Yes.
And like it's funny because Temple of Doom is also him being
Yeah.
like, well, of course I can do a sequel. This thing is made for a sequel, and then everyone's like, we don't like this.
Right. The thing I would
And
argue he
he
either
kinda
doesn't know
did
how
it
to
again
do
with
again
Jurassic
or
Park.
he gives up trying to do is the Last Crusade, which is like, guys, I'm sorry, let me just give you a Spielberg right down the middle home run kind of thing. And like from this point on, he either is like sort of, I don't know, he's not interested in repeating himself.
Not too interested. And it feels like when he does, not that Amistad is like him repeating himself exactly, but it's a little bit him trying to make another Tony historical epic. He stepped outside of
Yes.
his comfort zone again. It doesn't work in the same way.
But BFG feels like the clearest example to me of like, that's him making a movie that he's like, Spielberg should make this, right?
And Crystal Skull.
Yes.
And I defend Crystal Skull in some ways.
Yeah.
But obviously, I think he's probably dissatisfied with Crystal Skull.
Yes.
And he feels like Lucas and Ford wanted me to do that, so I fucking did it.
Yeah.
And there you have it. That's what I wanted to make, and it didn't really like go over.
Yeah.
And so when they're like, "Can we do another one?" He's like, "Absolutely not.
Right.
Like, I'm done."
Yeah.
Like, and that's him finally making that decision. Warhorse is the other one that kind of feels like they were like, "How can you not make this movie,
Right.
Stevie? Come on."
But
But that movie's good.
yeah.
Good.
He's also
Do you like Warhorse?
I
Sean?
do not.
Yeah, it's
I'm
not
sorry.
his best.
No.
Some people get really mad at us for that episode where we mostly just dunk on how everyone wants to fuck the horse.
We weren't dunking on it. We were celebrating. We're very
It's a hot horse.
sex positive. It's a hot horse. Everyone wants to fuck that horse. I look at this movie and I'm like, this still feels like the text everyone is studying when they're trying to construct their blockbusters.
Mhm. But nothing feels like this movie.
No.
I don't,
No,
I don't think you
nothing
can copy
feels
it.
like
This
this
is
movie.
my wildest take, and I don't know if you guys are immediately going to push back on this or you're going to get where I'm coming from. I watch this movie now, and I'm sort of astonished by how quaint it feels in certain ways. Whereas at that time, this movie felt like as big as a movie could possibly be. And now our movies have gotten so overly complicated that when you're like, this movie has like 10 speaking roles. Like it has an ensemble cast, but there are no like unnecessary characters.
You're absolutely right. It's such a strange movie in that sense that it is epic,
Yes.
and yet it's mostly set in like a couple of buildings, like sort of tucked away on this island,
The modern version.
in an empty, unopened,
Yes.
not ready yet theme park
It kind of
with a
has 5
skeleton
sets.
staff. Right.
Right.
Yes.
Like this, it looks expensive. It still looks great. But I'm just like, there is a focus to this that is the Spielberg like problem-solving clarity. Like the thing that he is best at is knowing exactly what the audience needs to focus on at any moment and cutting all the gristle and fat away from it to just like simplify the storytelling. In any modern version of this movie, and I'm not just talking about a modern Jurassic movie, but any movie like this today, Samuel Jackson's dialogue is spread across 10 characters. Right? And there is a clarity to the reason why we love Sam Jack in this movie and he makes such an impression is because it's one guy, and that one guy is given the space to actually have like a personality and a feeling of like what this means to him emotionally versus like, you know, in the last Jurassic movie, like Caleb Herron, who's a very funny comedian, is like guy behind a computer for 3 lines.
I forgot about that.
And he pops up and it's like, oh, this is fun. They cast a funny person in this movie. And then he disappears. And you're like, if you're going to put him here, here's a distinctive person. Give him a lot to do.
There's some really funny stuff in the last Jurassic movie. And on the big picture, I'm, I guess, known for not remembering what happens in any of the Jurassic World films or the chronology.
Very memorable.
I do remember have names that we all know.
I do remember in the most recent film, because there are so many characters.
So many.
There's a sequence where like all the characters need to get from like one station to another station without getting eaten by raptors. And it's like 18 people walking in a line because they've introduced so many people. I would argue that this movie... One, I completely agree with everything you said, just like David.
And by the way, at that point in the film, that's us dealing with the skeleton crew.
Right.
Like, they've whittled down the cast to only the
Many
18
people have died
finalists.
at that
Right.
But
Justice Smith has been, like, sidelined.
I don't know if this is a good story choice or not, but the fact that so few people work at fucking Jurassic Park... It's like it's a park full of dinosaurs and 8 people work there.
Right.
Like, what is going on here?
I know.
But I think that's...
Should we be like, that's bullshit, there would be more people? Or should we be like, no, this is a story about, like, essentially a startup.
It's a startup,
yes.
Where they're like, I don't know, we kind of like, as Malcolm said, kind of backed into like, oh, fuck, we can make dinosaurs be alive.
But also the cold open of this movie is like 10 characters, most of whom we don't see again, who like don't talk.
The movie does have the excuse of there's a hurricane, everyone left.
Right.
Like there are, when one imagines there are more people that have left.
That's the thing. I do wonder if that was almost a strategic choice on his part to be like open with showing a full staff, focusing on one specific area to imply at normal times.
There's a little more going on here.
It does help the movie because it does reduce the number of people you need to remember and who is delivering the information.
It helps a book too, because in a book, like it really, you don't want too unwieldy a group.
Right.
But I also think Crichton in writing this book is like, he's grinding his gears about like, you can't automate things. Like you can't just like, create something like this and then just have a guy program a security system. Like, he's got other gears he wants to grind.
Crichton on the right side of the AI debate.
He is. Yeah. I mean, Crichton is often on the right side of things, except for like, do women deserve to have a voice in society? And then he is dead wrong. Because the whole thing with Sphere is that the Sphere brings your nightmares to life, right?
Yeah. And
like, it's like they find this weird alien
and his worst nightmare was Sharon Stone talking.
Things start to truly go bad when the lady goes into the
has
Sphere.
Opinions.
Like, that's when it's like, uh-oh.
I'd like to circle back to disclosure.
Please.
Just disclosure is the film.
Yeah, that's a great...
A powerful woman rapes a man.
Yes.
Correct.
Disclosure is like
the movie.
Him being like, okay, I've thought of... Right, dinosaurs, spheres. What's my worst nightmare? A woman in the workplace.
Science run amok.
The other thing about Michael Crichton is he's like
so
40
tall.
feet tall. My other favorite thing is that his estate, and they probably will sue me for saying this, so maybe we should, just put a little marker on this pen.
Keep it in double.
Made fuss about Noah Wiley's in a new hospital show.
Oh, yeah,
right?
I saw that.
Yeah.
Called like The Pit, and it's set in Pittsburgh, and it's basically just ER2. It's just like, Noah Wiley plays an ER doctor, okay?
Sure.
Get used to it. And Michael Crichton's estate is like, Michael Crichton created ER. So we get royalties from this too, because this is clearly just more ER. You can call it something else, but it's fucking more ER, right?
Noah Wiley not allowed to play a doctor ever
Yeah,
again.
and it's like, bitch, you wrote a spec pilot in the 70s that then got turned into a TV show. You don't get to just own hospital shows forever.
Can I play devil's advocate for a second, though?
Yeah.
I am pretty certain that was explicitly...
It was going maybe to be an ER like a sequel, right?
I think it was explicitly developed as an ER sequel, and then at some point they went, oh, wait, how much would we have to pay the Crichton estate?
And probably not just the Crichton estate, but it's like, We reached out to
Spielberg, you
Eric
probably have to pay
LaSalle.
Spielberg.
No, but I'm just saying, like, fucking Gloria Rubin. Hey,
Right.
you want to come back? And she's like, not for nothing.
Right. The whole thing was just Wells and Wiley are back in the medical world. And I think at some point they did make the decision of like, if we shift this 10 degrees, it's a new thing.
Does this mean that you can't play another intern
Great question.
without the Reitman family getting a bite at that apple? Like, really, what are we talking about here?
Yeah, or just
think
a
about
movie
this.
about drafts.
Rick the Intern Afterlife?
Like, think long and hard what you say
No,
here.
I know.
Because
I
this
know.
affects your future payday.
I mean,
Yes.
Sean does a draft on his show every month. Do you think he owes
That's a good point.
the Reitman
I-
estate?
Call
I-
me Jason.
I think if I went to Montecito Pictures and was like, I want to develop a Rick the Intern Lego sequel, he's now GM.
He's running Isla Nublar.
Right. And then at some point, I like went to a different studio and was like, I have a pitch about a former assistant who then becomes a GM.
Okay.
But I had started the conversation
Mhm.
properly first.
Mhm.
That's the thing. I think if it was just like John Wells and Noah Wiley were like, it'd be fun to just do a show and not have to pay the Crichton estate, then Crichton's lawsuit would be kind of bullshit. I think they were talking with everyone and then
Right.
sort of went like, you know what? We actually have abandoned this project and we have an entirely new idea.
It's called The Pit, baby.
It's called The Pit.
Sherry Stringfield's still around? What's going on with her?
Oh, God. I love her so
She was
much.
great.
Dr. Lewis.
She was wonderful.
Uh,
What a great
let's
show
see.
that was.
ER is the greatest TV show of all time.
Oh, loved it.
Along with The X-Files and Gilmore Girls. Those are and The Simpsons, obviously. First 10 seasons.
Have you
and then I
considered
guess-
The Twilight Zone?
Twilight Zone's a good shout. I was
Yeah.
going to say, like, I guess, like, The Sopranos or
Mad
whatever.
Men. You've made the case recently that Mad Men's the best.
The Mad Men rewatch really...
That actually is my favorite. I've
Yeah.
said
Yeah,
that before.
that show really stands up fantastically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But not as good, of course, as my favorite show, The Romanoffs. Bring it back.
Did you finish it?
What if I'm like outside? No, I did not.
I didn't finish it either.
outside
Did you watch it?
Amazon being like, we're in Romanoffs season 2.
I really just wish Matt Weiner would stick to movies. It's clearly where his voice plays the best. Are
Where
you
is
here? You are here.
Where is he?
Great title.
Yeah.
Where I have no idea where he is.
Yeah.
I mean, The Romanoffs is the last thing he did. And that was
Yeah.
6 years ago, 7 years ago at this point. Anyway, Jurassic Park.
Jurassic Park.
It's a film in 1993 that Steven Spielberg directed that was quite successful.
It was the highest grossing film of all time for a period. Am I
It
wrong
was
about this?
absolutely
Yeah.
the highest grossing film of all time and
Yeah.
was beaten by Titanic.
Yes.
It beat, I think it took the record from E.T.
That
I think
sounds
E.T.
right.
had been the reigning champ for essentially 10 years.
Yes.
Like, I don't think anything beat E.T.
Well, you're forgetting, I do believe in 97,
Like, Star
earlier,
Wars
Star Wars jumps back up.
release and bump itself back
Star
up.
Wars has
sure.
6 months of being number one again before Titanic is the iceberg to that film's dreams.
Jurassic Park, and Sean likes it, and he selected it when
Yeah.
we said we're doing Steven Spielberg.
I did. Was
kind
I
of a
like-
risky choice.
Was I the first claim? Like,
I
did
think you might have
Did I
been.
get
I
first
mean,
shot?
Yeah.
Probably.
My memory of your text was 50% of my personality is liking Jurassic Park.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is.
Kind of have to do it.
And we were talking about Lynch.
Yep.
And
Yes.
the other 50% might be liking David
Sure.
Lynch. So I was forced to choose. But honestly, I take full responsibility for my bad Jurassic Park podcast, however many years ago that
You
was.
chose
So
wisely.
I'm happy
Well,
to be
this
here
is
with
the
you
correction.
doing this.
How old were you when this movie came out?
I was 11 years old.
Kind of in the exact sweet spot.
I changed my life. I
Yeah.
changed my life.
You were in the exact sweet spot.
Yeah,
'Cause
I
I
actually
was
don't know if
7.
there's a better age.
And I read the book before the movie
Mhm.
and did the thing where I was like, whoa, this is not like the book at all.
Yeah.
Like, probably the first like adult book that I
Right.
ever read.
Yeah,
And it was such a sensation. I mean, it's extraordinary. Like, that book was in every store. It was in
Yeah.
like sneaker stores. You know, like you could buy it everywhere. And still, the movie just took my breath away.
But I'm with you. Yes, it was that one of those early things where I was like, I can tell you what's different about the book.
Sure.
Like, like, oh, in fact, right, Hammond is kind of a jerk in the book, and
yeah.
Malcolm dies in the book, and all that.
But it's one of those things. Am I wrong about this? I mean, we have the dossier right here.
I'm gonna
But the
open it up.
movie was so fast tracked off of the idea
Yes,
that they're making the movie at the time that the book is being published, basically.
possibly. I
Like, I
will
think they're
get the
adapting it
exact
off of
timing
the
from the doc.
manuscript. Yeah.
It's certainly right. The
Yes.
rights were done and dusted before the book came out. Ben, did you see this film in theaters?
I did.
Yes.
You did.
Yeah.
How did it feel?
I remember just being like dinosaurs.
Mm.
They're alive. I can see them.
It was mind-blowing.
It was really because I, as a kid, and I assume like this is like very much a boys thing, but like
Well-
growing up, I was obsessed with dinosaurs.
My daughter is obsessed with dinosaurs.
So it's not just a boy thing.
Okay, sorry.
Dinosaurs are very, very cool when you're a kid.
And in
They're very
fact,
cool.
It's a kid thing
David's
in
daughter
general.
is particularly obsessed with one dinosaur. I don't know if you've heard about this. The good dinosaur?
She was briefly very obsessed with the good dinosaur.
I've noticed you an increased number of logs of that film on Letterboxd.
Well, David's just working on his book pitch.
You should do a 33 and a third style, monograph.
It's called The Best
Yeah.
Dinosaur.
Good Dinosaurs and Better Dinosaurs.
That movie is such a baffling series of artistic choices.
Can I just say one of the big things I really want to talk to you guys about is how this is actually the only good movie about dinosaurs. Which is just remarkable because of what Ben just said.
I think
which is
such
every
a good
kid
point.
loves dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is maybe you like The Lost World. Sure. People will defend Jurassic Park 3. Obviously, the Jurassic World movies are huge. Let's just set aside the franchise for a second.
Yeah.
Just
Set
say,
aside the franchise.
This represents. I've
got a list up. I'm just going to yell some titles at you.
Okay.
65 recently.
Not a
where
good
it was
masterpiece.
It was like Adam Driver goes back in time and he shoots dinosaurs. I was like, this is going to be good, right? That movie is unfortunately a dud.
Somehow not even a 65 out of 100.
Can I add one caveat before you continue to go through it, David?
Please.
Godzilla is not a dinosaur.
Yeah.
movie.
Oh, no, of course
Yeah.
not.
Just
No.
putting that out there.
No. Godzilla does not count.
No.
The Flintstones. Now, the Flintstones, they use dinosaurs well in
Dino's
that
very
movie.
good in it.
If someone said, give me the list of the 10 best dinosaur movies, how many movies would you need to name before you got to the Flintstones?
3? I'm struggling here. I'm on
Yeah.
J, Journey to the Center of the Earth. I guess that has dinosaurs in
Yeah.
it. The King Kong movies have tangential dinosaurs. I guess you could call those good, but they're
Right.
not really about dinosaurs.
But I do
they have
think,
dinosaurs.
I think they make the 10,
creatures.
and dinosaurs aren't top billed.
You could argue that dinosaurs
Mhm.
are the most interesting thing in the history of this planet.
There's a reason
We
they
are
stick around.
fascinated by dinosaurs.
The two coolest things, and they are things that kids tend to be obsessed with, right? Are that one, dinosaurs once walked the earth.
Yeah.
Giant monster
Yes.
lizards were top of the heap. We didn't exist. 2
Their
is
bones are huge.
right, and
Yeah.
we can find their bones.
Right.
2 is like there are
Never gets
planets
old.
in the sky
Yeah.
circling around us. One's red.
Right.
One is yellow. Where you're just like, did a kid come up with this idea that there's just like a blue one
But
and a
so
red
much
one?
of that is still speculative. Like the planet stuff is still futuristic because we don't have like commercial travel to those planets. The dinosaur thing is so wild when you think about how overwhelming a concept it is, but it's presented to kids as like, and by the way, this is like done deal, settled matter.
Yes.
Millions of years ago. They're not coming close
there's
to
like-
your front door.
Okay, there's like 1 million years BC, right? There's like the sort of old kind of
The original
adventure,
Lost World.
the original
like,
Lost
the argument
World,
is
Land
a lot. Right.
There's some
Land of
sort
the
of-
Time Forgot
Right,
is another
Ray
one.
Harryhausen
Right.
style.
Yes.
Yeah.
But like, are those good movies? Like, they're certainly
They're not
memorable.
great
They're
movies.
good. They're fun. It's fun to see the dinosaurs in them.
Yeah.
That's what they got.
I also don't think his best films are his dinosaur films.
No,
I
It's
agree.
like
no,
Sinbad
certainly,
and-
yeah, Sinbad,
Right.
the
Totally.
adventure,
The adventure
Yes.
films. Agree.
Yeah.
Transformers, when they have dinosaurs in them, is pretty good.
Well, those have Dinobots in them.
And I mean, one of my favorite line reading of all Transformers.
Is Stanley Tucci as Merlin?
No, he's good too. But when the fucking thing turns into a dinosaur the first
You
time?
mean when Grimlock turns from robot mode into beast mode?
No idea what you're talking about. And Ken Watanabe, who is of course voicing a samurai transformer, which we forget about.
Not ideal.
Swift?
Yeah.
What's his name?
I don't know.
I think
Stop
it's
asking
Swift.
me what
I
their
think it's
names are.
Autobot
Bushido.
Swift.
Yeah.
Says, I was expecting a giant car. That line always gets
That's
me.
good.
It's so funny.
You know who's a good guy?
It's such a weird moment of self-awareness where I'm like, the fucking samurai bot is like, don't we turn into cars?
So close to his name. It's not Swift, but it's like that. Drift. Autobot Drift, maybe?
I don't
Did
know.
you see Transformers 1?
I haven't yet. I've been away.
I have no one
You
to talk
liked
to
it,
about
right?
this movie. I did like
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Autobot Hound is not in it, right? That's
No.
my guy.
His character is named Drift. I have also not seen it, but I do like Josh Cooley,
Yes.
who made Toy Story 4.
I thought he did
And,
a nice job of it.
yeah.
I really liked it. And it has one of the great, like, third act, like, it's all happening moments
Hell
in
yeah.
recent movie history.
Wow.
Is
Yeah.
the second best dinosaur movie The Land Before Time, the Don Bluth film?
That was going to be
Maybe.
my take.
Is that probably
By default?
like the second most
Like,
iconic dinosaur
Here's
movie
what
in a
is
way?
really damning. Disney's Dinosaur is a mortal lock for the top 10, and that movie is boring as hell.
Right, both. That's I think what Sean is talking about. It's like
Yeah.
there have been 2 bites at the giant CGI dinosaur movie Apple.
Yeah.
Both times you're like, well, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
This is perfect because dinosaurs so hard to accomplish this. Do it animated. Both movies stink.
Yeah.
But isn't that just even more of a testimony
Yes.
to the amazing power of Jurassic Park? They were like, we can't do anything.
So I won't harp on this because we covered it in our Lost World episode years and years ago, but I think the reason this movie is not as like a totemic informative for me as it is for many in my generation, the generation before and after, is my parents are super overprotective, did not let me see this movie for years.
Oh, for
I
years.
saw
Wow.
Lost World in theaters as my first Jurassic, and that blew my mind.
Oh,
Sure.
interesting.
Sure.
And I think that movie having the impact of like, holy shit, I am seeing dinosaurs on screen.
Yeah, you were like 8 when that movie came out, probably.
Right. It took that juice where I have that memory of seeing that and feeling like it was one of my first like kind of scary blockbusters I was allowed to see. And I had that, holy shit, it's on a big screen. Where then
So it was
later
your
I
Jurassic
came around
Park.
to this. Yeah. And then I clearly was like, well, this is better. But I didn't have that sort of key emotional discovery.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
This is like Jurassic Park, by comparison to The Lost World, is weirdly restrained and small.
Yes. Yes.
Which it didn't feel that way when we were kids, but
No.
when you watch it now, like you were saying before, like not only are there few characters, but you're on an island. You don't even really fully understand the geography of where you are. Sometimes we go to a new place and we're like, what building is this?
Yes.
And how far away was it? And what? They're reunited. You know, like the mapping of the movie is actually a little bit confusing at times, but it all works out. In the end.
There are a lot of Spielberg cheats in this, which he like openly talks about, where it's like spatially things change to benefit him in a sequence if he needs them to be. He will go against how things were previously established. But it's insane how quickly they get out of this movie.
It is. The premise of this movie is so massive.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that fundamentally it's a movie about like they take one ride on the ride.
Yeah.
It goes really wrong. They leave with 2 deaths.
And the ride is a backlot
3.
tour. It's a slow trek.
Right.
It's a Six Flags Great Safari.
3 people die in this movie, right? Wayne Knight, Samuel L. Jackson, and
Well, show some respect.
Bob Peck.
Ray Arnold,
No, and Gennaro too. the lawyer.
Gennaro.
Oh, the lawyer. Okay, so there's 4 deaths. The book has a couple more extra ones that they cut in
Plus
this.
that guy who gets eaten at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
Whoever that is.
Yeah,
salute to
salute.
him.
Yeah.
Thank you for your work.
Raptor got him.
Yeah.
But like, this isn't even a total like sort of slasher film of
No.
like only fucking Alan and the kids make it off or whatever.
No.
You know, it's like
No.
most of them leave being like, whew, that actually we shouldn't do that. Like, you know,
Right.
like a lesson learned. Like, geez, that sucked.
Yeah.
And none of the main characters died. And
No, famously, Ian Malcolm was supposed to die.
yes, he dies in the book.
Right. And was supposed to die in the script.
Yes.
Was originally in production. The plan was to have him die at the moment he gets trapped underneath some bamboo.
Right.
And while filming, they were like, we're going to fucking kick this guy out of the movie?
Crazy. Okay, I'm opening the dossier. Okay, Michael Crichton. He was a doctor, became a novelist. He's very tall, wrote ER.
He was short. He became tall.
Didn't think women should talk too much. Okay. Wrote lots of books. 1980, he writes Congo,
Mhm.
and sort of stops writing books for a bit and more turns to film.
Will ride for the film for the rest of my life.
Congo?
I insist Congo is good.
Congo is fun.
I have seen it so many times, and
Yeah.
I know that it is wildly considered it's considered a huge misfire. I
Yeah.
love it.
It is my friend, one of my best friends, Alex Perlin. Shout out Alex Perlin, who I know listens to the podcast. Is a lawyer, is a public defender. Congo is his favorite movie of all time.
Probably shouldn't be revealing that. He might get disbarred.
Possible. His bachelor party was watching Congo.
Where?
That's awesome.
We went to Ample Hills. We had
Ice
their
cream.
ice cream making class, and then we went back to his apartment and watched Congo on VHS.
That's a very wholesome bachelor
He's a
party.
very wholesome
Sure,
man.
Yes.
Can I just I don't want to belabor this, but
Yeah.
Congo, directed by Frank Marshall, written
Yes.
by John Patrick Shanley.
Yeah.
Who only writes normal movies. Obsessed with writing
Cinematography,
normal movies.
Alan Daviau.
Yeah, an
Edited
incredible,
by Ann V. Coates.
incredible cat. Like
Uh,
Laura Linney,
music
Bruce
by Jerry
Campbell,
Goldsmith.
Fantastic
Ernie
Jerry
Hudson,
Goldsmith
Delroy
score.
Lindo.
Ernie Hudson is really fun in Congo.
Tim Curry, Herkimer Hamoka, you know?
Delroy Lindo, like one of the best one-scene performances. Anyway, the point
Stop eating my sesame cake.
is, he has made me really love Congo through
Yeah.
his eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Crichton turns to making movies. He made some pretty good. Coma is a fun movie.
Yes.
Great
I like
Train
Coma,
Robbery.
Yeah.
Never seen Looker or Runaway.
No, those are both
Tom Selleck?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Looker looks kind of cool.
Looker's good. I've
Ooh,
seen
if
that.
looks could kill. Oh, it seems that this movie's about cosmetic surgery on women. I'm sure Michael Crichton had very normal feelings about that. But then in 1983, he thinks of this idea as a screenplay.
Sure.
He's like, I'm not going to write a novel. I want to turn that into a movie.
Let's also acknowledge Westworld and Future World have already happened in the 70s.
Absolutely.
He's already set up this theme park that goes wrong thing.
And he said his approach to writing the story was initially about like the person doing the cloning in secret, and he couldn't find a way in, and he kind of put it aside. And then he was like, no, this needs to be about like the environment where people are interacting with dinosaurs, right? He didn't want to do it in like dinos in New York City.
Sure.
He wanted it to be in like sort of the natural world. And then eventually he's like, I'll write a book like that, whatever. That's his way in. And he thinks about the theme park idea, which of course he had done with Westworld.
Right. So he's incredibly prolific from the 60s through the 70s.
Yeah.
And then 1980 Congo, 1987 Sphere, 1990 Jurassic Park.
Right.
He like slows way down.
Yeah.
Some of this bumps up against the timeline as established in JJ's dossier, which I fully trust. I'm just going to repeat what I heard and try to make sense of it relative to this timeline as explained. I went to a very bizarre event some years ago that was a 92nd Street Y talk for the release of Michael Ovitz's book,
Sure.
his memoirs, in conversation with Bill Murray,
Cool.
his favorite client he ever had. He decided to have moderate, even though Bill Murray is famously someone who has not had reps for 35 years.
Right.
But Ovitz, I think, was his last rep he ever had. And Murray asked him at one point, like, what is your proudest accomplishment of your entire career? And he said, getting Jurassic Park out of Crichton. And he unpacked that to say, like, Michael Crichton basically had writer's block for most of the 80s.
Which I believe is true. Yes. Yeah. At least novel block. Yes. Right.
And, like, could not get something figured out. It makes sense that Jurassic was something that had been floating around in different forms. But then this final breakthrough of, like, he's figured out how to frame this story. And that the second, like, he says to Ovitz, here's the pitch, DNA, dinosaur theme park. Michael Ovitz like rubs his hands together and goes to everyone and is like, I have the greatest project of all time incoming.
Spielberg, of course, crosses paths with Crichton on ER, which was conceived of as a film, and Spielberg helps pivot that thing to a TV show that was mildly successful. Being sarcastic, it was hugely successful.
Yeah. Later inspires The Pit, America's most successful TV show.
And that is at one point, Crichton's like, yeah, I finished this book about dinosaurs, Jurassic Park. It's getting approved by publishers.
He gets the early tip off, Spielberg.
And Spielberg's like, would love to read that.
Yeah.
Dinosaurs sounds cool.
Yeah.
And now Crichton claims that he basically was like, I don't want to get into some bidding war. Like, if you want to make it, like, let's make it. But
And Michael Ovitz said, I would love to get into a bidding war. Let's make a bidding war start.
as we said, Warner Brothers, Tim Burton, Columbia, Richard Donner, Fox, Joe Dante, like all these studios enter a bidding war for the rights to that movie. James Cameron also claims he tried to buy the rights.
Makes sense.
Can I just pause you for one moment?
Please.
What would be the contemporary version of this bidding war?
It'd be like, okay, so are we trying to think of like filmmakers who are allied with this, just like Villeneuve and WB, right?
Yeah.
Or Villeneuve
So
and
it's
Legendary.
Chris Nolan and Universal.
Sure.
Chris
That's
Nolan
one.
and
Villeneuve
now
and
Universal.
WB.
Tarantino and Sony. No, I'm joking.
Would watch it.
Yeah.
Sure. No, okay, but like Villeneuve,
But that's
Nolan.
Your question is, who would be the people pitch for the project if
Right.
Jurassic Park,
It's-
the galleys were hitting?
Look,
Okay.
no, I love it. It's Villeneuve and WB. It's
Yeah.
Nolan and Universal. Disney is like, I don't know, one of the fucking Kon-Tiki guys who made Maleficent 2.
Who now also directed Tron?
Yeah, that's why they keep being like, it's one or two of them. I can't
Right.
remember if they work together or not, but like
Yeah, I
those
truly
guys.
could not tell you if one guy has been making all those movies. They've been switching off.
Paramount would be like Kaczynski or something.
I was going to say Kaczynski for
Yeah.
Apple, but
or Apple,
but
or
Kaczynski
whoever.
doing
Right.
Tron also, that all
Right.
that all
Right,
fits
Netflix
together.
is like our new chatbot will be directing this.
It would have
film.
been
Russos.
Netflix putting
Yeah, the
forth
Russos.
Russos, but now I feel like the Russos have. Well, I mean, fucking the Avengers 5 and 6 being Agbo Productions is fascinating to me.
The fuck is Agbo again?
That's
Agbo is
production
their
company.
production company
Why is
that
it
they
called
Why
were.
is that
Agbo?
fascinating to you?
Because that was like a fucking name they used in their improv and sketch troupe in college that they found a funny last name and the...
Gun to your head.
Yeah.
Avengers 5 and 6, will they be good?
No. I don't think so. I mean, maybe I'll be wrong. I just think that I think it's gotten unwieldy. I don't think there's any way to focus things back up. But all I'm saying is...
There's ways, but I don't know if they'll pull it off.
Their whole thing was, we got funding. We're going to be our own studio. Like, they were trying to almost do something closer to DreamWorks, making stuff for the streamers and whatever.
Yes.
And going back and doing Avengers could be seen as some admission of failure. We got to go back and play by someone else's rules. Part of the announcement of them coming back quietly was these will be an Agbo co-production. Right. That Disney and Marvel were so desperate to get them back that they're cutting the company in on it, which is kind of unfathomable.
It is a big thing to cut them in on.
I will not defend any of the other things that they have worked on, but those things that they made with that company,
yes,
I like.
The Avengers films
I like those
are successful.
Films.
And
I really like Endgame.
Yeah. James Cameron, yes, says when he saw the film, he realized I was not the person to make it. Mine would have been more like aliens with dinosaurs. Yeah. Dinosaurs are more for kids. He made a movie for kids. His sensibility was right. I think I would have been too nasty.
Yeah.
Classic James Cameron, like weird big dick, like backhanded compliment shit. But, right, like James Cameron's always doing that.
I'm too much of a big boy for this shit.
My favorite thing is how he correctly injected himself into the implosion of the submersible. He's like, yeah, I knew that fucking thing. Who cares? Fuck that guy.
I'm trying to think who the other people would be, though, that they'd like put forward. There aren't... Yeah.
Now I just Villeneuve, Nolan. Those names are very obvious in terms of who wants to do a big scale thing. There's this guy Colin Trevorrow. I mean, he's a real home run hitter. It's Trevorrow. Sorry. Anyway,
like borrow. Borrow ideas from other people.
Right. Or like Sabaros.
Yeah.
Spielberg said he liked dinosaurs a lot. His favorite dinosaur movie.
The good dinosaur. Oh, right. Fucking timeline.
He's like, King Kong is certainly the T-Rex in King Kong is the cinematic dinosaur I remembered best. When I read the book, the Crichton book, it flashed back to Jaws for me. Mm-hmm. I was a huge Ray Harryhausen fan. I always thought about making a movie like that. But he also said, I'm trying to make a good sequel to Jaws. It's shameless. I can tell you that now. He said that to the New Yorker in 1994.
Interesting.
That he is kind of admitting this is kind of in my continuum of creature feature.
Yes.
Right?
And the cast is broader, but you do have the kind of core trifecta thing.
Yeah, 100%. Right. Like
it's
three good character-y actor people rather than lunkheads.
Because it's one of the most fascinating sort of what ifs with this movie is when Universal spends a bunch of money to buy this for Spielberg, their immediate thought is like, oh, Harrison Ford and Sean Connery as Hammond.
Right.
This should be the most all-star A-list movie possible. And Spielberg's like, shouldn't we spend the money on the dinosaurs? Like, just get good actors, which was basically the Jaws formula. Mm-hmm. Three people who are not obvious leads for a blockbuster. But I also think both of those movies, this movie and Jaws, have the thing that's also the core thing that has always made Star Trek work. A lot of the great franchises, which is you basically have id ego, super ego.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Right. You have three fun characters that all represent the sort of corners of the psyche.
Absolutely.
In how to address a humongous problem.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a big shark.
There's a quote unquote casting what if that I think materially explodes that though.
Go ahead.
Which is
Kurt Russell.
He would be so
if it's
fucking
if it's Kurt Russell in the Sam Neill role, it's a totally different movie.
It is.
And I think I love Sam Neill in this movie.
I do too.
Maybe better. Because Kurt Russell on an adventure, there's not anything better in movies.
That's a very fun movie. I just think that this movie is really special because of Sam Neill, because it's such a curveball to have that guy in that position in the movie.
That's
this guy where you're like, I'm rooting for this guy.
Yes.
It's not like he's tremendously unlikable.
Right.
Sam Neill's a good actor. He's got a good presence, but you are like, wait, this is the hero? Is this kind of he's kind of introverted, I don't really want to talk to people or not in some squirrely Newt Scamander way, just in a sort of
don't get me started on Newt.
Because like with Newt Scamander, who I think about a lot, I'm like, this movie is setting itself the immense challenge of like someone who doesn't want the camera to be pointed at him.
Can't make eye contact with people.
He can't look at anyone.
Who's hiding in his coat at all times.
And like, oh, what an interesting challenge to have someone, the most unpersonable guy, like be the hero.
I think Kurt Russell in
Kurt
the
Russell,
Dante
he'll be like,
version,
come on, guys.
Yeah, that would be
that's
fun.
like that's harmonizing,
Don't
right?
move.
Yeah.
Right. I think Russell would have been a little too winky in this in a way that would have been fun. If this was the version we had, I'd be
Right.
like, he's great in this. But there's something about the like earnestness of Sam Neill, of him not being the kind of guy who you're used to existing in this kind of movie, him being a little bit like cold and thorny.
This is Tombstone breakdown era Kurt Russell.
I know.
mean, he's very
great era for
serious
him.
at this time. He's really good at this time.
But I think, I agree with you. I agree with you. Do you not think if you put him in this movie with Spielberg and you're reacting to dinosaurs, he starts to go a little Jack Burton?
He might. And it's a different movie, and I think
Yeah.
everything David just said is bang on. Like
Yeah.
Sam Neill makes the movie totally unique
Yeah.
and unusual, and his evolution as a character is a big part of why you get emotionally connected to the movie.
Yes.
But I just see Kurt Russell and I'm like, damn, he's like taming dinosaurs. I want to see that. I want to see that today.
The
third
put him
thing-
in like fucking Jurassic Park free.
By the way, the third thing Alan does, apart from learn how to put on a seatbelt and learn how to connect with children, is he fucking fends off the most direct assault on his girlfriend by the sexiest man who ever lived. Right?
Oh.
Ian Malcolm is like suddenly training his fucking missile sights on Laura Dern, and Sam Neill's like waving him off.
This is one of those rare examples of a performance that is like so parodied, so impersonated, so memed, and you watch the real thing and you're like, the real thing is bigger than anyone else's interpretation
It's
of
a
it.
very big performance.
It's
so-
astonishing.
It's so clear that Steven Spielberg wants to fuck Jeff Goldblum the
Yes.
way he films him in this
100%.
movie.
Yes.
I mean,
He
with
films him
the
like
light
Marilyn
behind
Monroe.
him.
Right.
Yes, yeah. It's so funny that they eat their Chilean seabacks in what seems to be like a black box theater with like perfect spotlights illuminating all of them. It's such a
This
weird
viewing, I've really actually
Yes.
took in that scene,
Yeah.
and like it's bonkers.
It's bonkers because a lot of Jurassic Park is set in like an office
dining hall.
with with
Yeah.
computers and like a kind of chintzy Disney Worldy kind of and then that one scene Spielberg was clearly like, now let's light the shit out of this dining room scene.
It's so
man.
funny because it's, of course, this is Dean Conde, the great
Yes.
Dean Conde.
Brilliant.
The
Collaborator of John Carpenter as well as
the
Steven
Wicked
Spielberg, yes.
Wicked, what's
And,
Wicked's last name? My joke is that Dean Conde looks like an Ewok.
He does.
But he's doing the fucking pools of light thing that Spielberg's gonna like take to the ends of the earth with Janusz.
Yes.
And Schindler's the first Janusz
This is the
movie?
handoff, of
This is
course.
the
Yes,
handoff.
this is when Janusz is going to take over after this one.
I mean, all of the sort of like correct decisions of Spielberg reads this book. He's like, oh, this character feels a little bit like Brundle from The Fly. Cast Jeff Goldblum. Jeff Goldblum's like, I've kind of done this before. Wouldn't it be funny to play this against type? This guy's a rock star.
Right.
And they're like, oh, that would be fun. This is the guy who'll give you the color in the first 40 minutes of the movie and then he dies. And then they're like, we cannot kill this guy off.
He is
He
really
is the
being
juice.
introduced to someone you're like, oh, I'm excited for this kind of jerk to die. Right. Like
Right.
he's so high on his own
The,
supply.
the 30 minutes of him just aggressively trying to bed Laura Dern is the kind of plotting you do when you're like, and by the way, this guy's going to be dead in 2 minutes.
Yes,
We're going
well,
heavy on
literally
him
the
right
drops
now.
of water on the hand
Totally.
in that sequence. You're like, it's about to be curtains
This is his
for Dr.
final
Ian Malcolm.
moment.
Yeah,
And there's something about the way he plays him. It's the weird magic of Jeff Goldblum where you're like, this guy's a creep and I kind of have no problems with it. Where he's just like,
Yes.
in any other setup, everyone is rooting for this guy to be kicked out of the movie.
he's the only character though who's written with any panache.
Yes.
Like none of the other characters' lines of dialogue
Right.
have personality.
But that's
they're machines to push the story
The
forward.
judgment
Large.
on Goldblum's part, and who knows how much of it was motivated by ego and him being like, I want to be cool.
Mhm.
But there's a story sense here that is very smart of like, everyone else is just kind of doing their job. And Hammond, who's the only other guy who's sort of getting some joy out of it, is trying very hard to do this avuncular Disney thing. You do need someone who's like got swagger.
Yeah, he pulls it off. He's on fire.
He's
in
on
this
fire.
movie.
It's an incredibly impressive and obviously iconic performance.
David, on your spreadsheet, do you have any acting nominations for this movie?
I was literally, Griffin, having the same thought
I was watching this being like, I bet David gives this one supporting actor nomination, and I'm trying to figure out who he would pick.
I have Jeff Goldblum.
Okay.
Yeah. Ray Fiennes, Schindler's List, Jeff Goldblum, Jurassic Park, Tommy Lee Jones, The Fugitive, Val Kilmer, Tombstone, Bing Kingsley, Schindler's List. It's a pretty
good 5.
Yeah, it's pretty boring, but pretty good.
Yeah.
1993, man, great year for movies.
Yeah, I do.
Piano, Age of Innocence, Groundhog Day,
incredible
Schindler's List,
year
Naked.
for Sam Neill.
Yeah,
an incredible year for Steven Spielberg.
Sure.
Laura Dern. This is only 3 years after Wild at Heart.
Yep.
Which we've covered semi-recently.
Yeah, and she's only what, like, she's quite young, 25 or something.
25 in this movie?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, someone who started out as a child star, really started acting in her teen years, is then sort of like a young adult star. The shift to this movie, you're like, oh, this is an adult person.
Yeah.
Like, from this movie on, Laura Dern is permanently 45 years old, right?
Because of how they style her, and now her style is so cool, but I think at the time they're trying to style her older.
Yes.
Right? Like, she's got this kind of like professional sort of workmanlike, thing going on with the khakis.
She has the gravitas. I'm saying she pulls it off. How many movies do we see like this where you introduce a 25-year-old and the movie says like, this is the smartest scientist in the world, and you're like, this is a child straight off the CW.
This is Hawk Tuah. Come on.
Right.
She's not a paleobotanist or whatever the hell.
If the timeline was shifted 9 months, Haley Welch would be in Jurassic City, right? If that happened 9 months earlier, or Jurassic City filmed 9 months later.
Is that what the movie's called?
No, now it's called something dumb. Jurassic City was the working title. Now it's called like Jurassic World Revival.
It is so fucking funny that they were like, we're gonna make a Jurassic Park movie, and you're like, you are, and you're like, yeah, we fucking made it. It's got ScarJo. It's probably fine. It's coming out tomorrow.
Ali.
Yeah. Anyway, Jurassic Park. Go ahead.
Laura Dern is only 57.
This is the thing, because
she started out very young.
and she's so young in this movie.
Yeah. She's very foxy in this movie. I don't know what to say.
She's incredibly
an absolute
attractive.
fucking mega babe.
Really cute. Yeah.
She also, have you seen the meme about how she sits down?
Oh, yes.
Where she goes like,
Yes, at the table in the dining room.
Very, very interesting choice. All right, back to this dossier. Okay, Michael Crichton.
But another incredibly bizarre choice for this film.
Michael Crichton, we're on the script.
Okay, we're on the
Spielberg's
script.
like to Crichton, like, write me a script. It won't be the shooting script or anything, but can you please just take the first pass at turning this into a movie? Crichton agrees. Then Malia Scotch Marmo, who co-wrote on Hook but doesn't get a credit on it, comes aboard. She says her big contribution was fleshing out Ellie Sattler and the kids. And then David Koepp, who had written Death Becomes Her for Zemeckis, is brought on board. And he is the one who's like, we need to have this Grant character have more of an arc, and it should be the kid thing.
Yeah.
Because that is not present in the books. In the books, Alan Grant has no problem with the kids. Like, he's not like, oh, these fucking kids.
Yeah.
That is them going from like, he kind of has a chip on his shoulder about children for whatever reason, to he loves these two kids, is David Koepp's big idea.
Not to do endless comparison point here, but it is astonishing how relatively understated his arc is compared to, say, Jurassic World, in which characters keep on calling up Bryce Dallas Howard on the phone and saying, when are you going to stop focusing on your job and have kids?
Why do you keep running this dinosaur park?
They're the only
when you
joy
could give
in
birth?
life. Right. Like, it's one of the things I find most fascinating about this movie is every time I watch it, I have a different interpretation of Sattler and Grant's relationship.
What is it right now?
Right now, I think they
Hand
have
stuff only.
No, I think they have slept together intermittently a number of times and have never been fully committed, but have never had a conversation about whether or not they're committed.
That is how I take it, is that they are romantically involved because they work in this bizarre field where all you do is like sit in a trailer in the Mojave Desert or whatever, scraping bones.
Yeah.
And he's handsome and she's beautiful.
Scraping bones.
Right.
Scrape. And so they do a little bone scraping. But yeah, like, he's too emotionally stunted to be like, would you like to like get married, or, you know?
Right. She's dating a much older guy who is emotionally much younger than her.
Who's intellectually very impressive and was like, what if dinosaurs were birds? And everyone's like, whoa.
And is what I think is the nuanced version of this is like that it's not like she's like, why won't you settle down and have kids with me? The idea of kids sort of represents like, when is this guy gonna like
grow up a little bit,
diversify? Yeah.
And it takes Malcolm being like, I marry a new woman every year, and she just jumped to the top of my list, for Grant to be like, hello?
Yeah.
You know, he doesn't even like say like, we are dating. He's just like, yeah. When Malcolm's like, are you two? He's like, yeah. And like, that's about as much as he can describe it.
Right, exactly.
Right. He can't go further than that.
Right.
Because it's a PG movie. It is a PG movie, which is insane. Or is it PG-13?
I think it has to be PG-13.
Yeah, it might be PG-13. It's PG-13. In Britain, it was PG.
Wow.
I remember that. And in the United Kingdom of Don't You Dare. And it was a little surprising. It's because this movie is very intense.
It is.
And it has a severed arm in it.
Let's also just, to the point of that conversation, call out, not the rating, but the relationship dynamics. Goldblum and Dern date for a while after this movie. Like, the scenes you're watching have the juice of, this is actually working.
Yeah, for sure.
The water on the hands, I'm like, they're about to fuck.
Yeah.
Like they are moments from fucking.
They call cut. Both of them are going to the same trailer.
She's giving Sam Neill none of what she's giving Jeff
With
Goldblum
Sam
in
Neill,
this
it's
movie.
more of a like, oh, Alan, you sweetie pie.
Goldblum just looks so fucking hot.
He does.
Insane.
It's crazy.
The shot of him with his shirt
It's
open and he's
just so
laid up
good.
and he's greased up. It's what? It's like professional wrestling or
And I'm
something.
sure there are people in 1993, because like in 1993, I saw this film in theaters. I was young, and then I see Independence Day when I'm 10, right? And I'm like, yeah, well, Jeff Goldblum is like a movie star from movies that I see. I know that. But there must have been so many people going to see this movie being like, wait, this sort of squirrely guy from like fucking Buckaroo Banzai and The Big Chill and The Fly is like now like Earth's hottest man?
I have a very distinct memory of my father.
Yes,
after,
I'm sure your father was activated by this. Yes.
Lost World's opening weekend when it had the biggest opening weekend of all time. Or maybe when it was at the end of its run, but during its box office run, saying to me, you ever think about how weird it is that Jeff Goldblum's in 3 of the highest grossing movies of all
the big
time?
Ones.
He was like, that's just weird.
And
Jurassic Park, Independence Day in 9 months.
Holy Man.
Holy Man was huge. People forget that.
So Kep says his approach was, throwing out details. He was like, the minute characters started talking about their personal lives, you don't care. You're like, I want to see dinosaurs, right?
It's one of those funny little tidbits that like BD Wong is one of like 5 solo cards. He's on the billing of the poster. And it's because they cast him while they were still adapting it. And his character's so big in the book that they were like, well, he'll be the 5th lead. And then it ends up being one scene, but the contract was locked in.
And like the other thing about Jurassic Park is that like it's not really a fast-paced movie. No. As much as Kep is saying, like, I simplified, I took things out. The movie has an incredible amount of setup to the point of, now I love the first 45 minutes of Jurassic Park. I love to like luxuriate in it.
Yes.
But if I'm watching it for the first time, I'm probably like, can we get to the dinosaur antics?
Yeah.
And now you watch it and you're like, this movie is explaining every single fucking thing to you that you need to know for the last half of this movie to be perfect.
It's
perfect
Inception shit, except it's the thing that makes Spielberg the king is he knows how to do this in a way that doesn't sound like an info dump.
Yes, and also in Inception in Act 3, he's like, 3 other rules I forgot to mention.
Right. But like this is such.
Here's how limbo actually works.
I mean, you guys know where I stand on that
wrong.
whole situation. Yeah, it's just a movie that does not make sense. Unlike Mr. DNA, who does a wonderful job of making us understand in clear terms what is at play in the film Jurassic Park.
But that's perfect Spielberg magic where he's like making a joke out of the fact that he needs to stop the movie for 4 minutes and explain the science.
Using Greg Burson's voice, who is like a legendary animated voice actor.
The animation itself is great.
Yeah. Spielberg's idea.
This is what it would be in this reality. This is how to make it palatable to the audience.
You're on tour. It's like you're at the park on tour. It's a brilliant idea.
Yeah.
Laura Dern says she was making a film called Wild at Heart, which we discussed on this podcast not that long ago. Yeah. And she told Nick Cage, who she had just worked with on Wild at Heart, they want to put me on the phone with Steven Spielberg for like a dinosaur movie.
It's like a straight jump, basically.
I mean, which makes sense, right? Like, and Nick Cage says, and I love this, you're doing a dinosaur movie? No one can ever say no to a dinosaur movie. And she's like, what? And he's like, it is the dream of my life to do a dinosaur movie. It makes so much sense that Nick Cage in 1990 was like, if you don't fucking get this movie, I'm going to put on a blonde wig and say I'm Laura Dern.
I mean, this is fascinating because Cage also at this point in time is kind of stuck dead between Ian Malcolm and Alan Grant.
He could be Malcolm. He could be Grant. He could kind of do either.
He's kind of...
He's not quite...
He's not right.
The energy the movie arrives at, for sure.
But has he ever gotten to act with a dinosaur?
Surely he has.
Well, he did pay $276,000 for a dinosaur skull.
Right. He's gotten to live with a dinosaur.
That's right.
He has dinosaur skulls in his home.
Where is your dinosaur skull here in this wonderful studio?
Great fucking question.
Where is it? I'm
Boys,
still looking for it.
Can we budget for a dino bone?
Now that we've done this episode, it could be a business expense.
Oh, absolutely.
Write it off.
Are you looking up if Cage has ever been in a movie with a dinosaur?
Oh, I wasn't. I'm sorry. I can if you want.
I don't believe he has.
That's kind of crazy.
I can't think
if
of one.
Yeah.
Yeah, he should. Okay. William Hurt turned down Ellen Grant in one of the more insane decisions of his life, possibly.
But could play
100%. Like, he makes sense.
I would also contend, like, he's 10% colder
I agree.
than Sam Neill.
But like at the time, that's a very logical choice, right?
Totally.
Kurt Russell and Richard Dreyfuss were both deemed too expensive because this movie was the budget's going elsewhere, folks, right? And Neil is brought in last minute. Neil says, like, you know, he was going to a job and was basically told, like, Steven Spielberg needs to talk to you in like half an hour. And 2 days later, he had the part, and 3 weeks later, he's in Hawaii, like making Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
Jeff Goldblum.
I assume mostly being cast off of like Dead Calm.
Yeah, he was a
Huge
guy.
Possession fan.
Yeah.
Maybe not
he was
Possession,
a
but
guy,
like the
but I'm
Omen
like-
movie,
Right. I'm like, what?
which is bad, but he's, you know, kind of what makes it.
I'm saying Dead Calm
interesting.
just because it was a little bit of a crossover. It was sort of the
Yeah.
timing lines up. Like, what was the? What is
I think it's that and Red October, maybe.
Sure.
He's a face, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's interesting though. It's like I
mean,
don't
look,
know
we've
why he had
covered
juice.
a certain amount of this run up. He's tremendously good in the fucking Carpenter movies. And Piano obviously is the same year as this. Like it's one of those perfect storm moments where he just fully transcends.
Right.
But yeah, he's a very odd choice for this.
Goldblum, Janet Hershenson, who cast this movie, read the book and was like, I'm seeing a Jeff Goldblum for this role. Now, Jim Carrey read for the part and they really liked his like audition. And that is another fascinating fork in the road to imagine. But Goldblum was pretty much always their first choice. And Steven at one point during the meeting said to Goldblum, like, there is some sort of idea of maybe we just merge the Alan and Ian characters into one character. Like, why do we have these two leads?
Like thinking out loud.
Right.
And Goldblum fights
was
for
like,
his job.
don't do that.
Yeah.
Like, that's a bad idea. I know what to do for this character.
Make him
like,
different.
You know, don't
Yeah.
make me just like the hero of this movie. Because one of the problems with Lost World is he has to be the hero.
Yes.
And he has to like deliver lines of dialogue, you know, like that are just explaining shit
Right.
about what's going on with dinosaurs. And you're like, that's not what he's here for. He needs to be the chaos element.
Absolutely.
Like,
yeah.
I think he might be maybe one of the best bad boy scientists in all of movies.
I mean, put forth a competitor. Like, who even comes close? Who's the rival for that throne? This is basically him defining that as the type that everyone else tries to figure out how to put in their movie.
I mean,
Yeah.
Dr. Frankenstein, he was kind of a bad boy scientist.
This is true. Dr. Evil.
It's
kind of a bad
that's a
choice.
good one. Yeah,
guess
Dr.
it is
Strangelove, he
scientist,
was
yeah.
kind of a bad boy scientist.
What about
Do you
Dr.
know-
Strange?
Do you know that
Dr.
in
Strange, certainly.
London, a city that David Sims once lived in,
Mhm.
there is about to open a staged adaptation of Dr. Strangelove, adapted by Armando Iannucci, starring Steve Coogan.
I was made aware of this by our friend Tim Simons.
That is kind of wild.
Sounds fun.
We covered, you were our guest on that.
I was.
I wish them all the best. That's a huge swing.
Should not be touched. Strangelove.
Probably not.
It is a moment in time movie that
If
should not be
anyone were to
touched.
try to touch it in a different medium and format, those two guys working together make a ton of sense, but it is certainly a huge,
Do you guys see?
huge
Do
swing.
you guys see the franchise yet? Have you?
I've not watched the
No,
franchise.
is that no? Yeah,
No.
the whole it's either swings or you know he hits or misses. Like it's yeah.
I hope
want
they let
to
him
figure
do
it
a
out.
third TV show that has a very expensive premise rather than just
Perhaps
like
a dinosaur
offices.
show.
Yeah.
So John Hammond is a more straightforwardly greedy character in the book.
Sure.
Spielberg is like, can you make him a little more like sort of Steven Spielberg-y? Like he's dreaming of a utopia and it slips
And a
through
little
his
Walt
grasp.
Disney and
Right,
yeah,
very Disney-esque. I think Richard Attenborough is brilliant casting.
I think it's incredible.
Agreed.
He is obviously being cast sort of as a guy that Spielberg probably looks up to some extent, like in Gandhi beat.
I was going to say, that's the
E.T.'s
most
ass
interesting
raw at the
part.
Oscars.
Is you like think about them probably spending that award season
Yeah.
crossing paths over and over again. Obviously, the gauntlet of like fucking awards campaigning was not what it was back then.
Sure, but nonetheless, he's a young gun, and Richard Attenborough's the old
Right.
pro. Richard Attenborough's a great actor,
Yeah.
who then becomes a incredibly medium director.
But at this point, he had not acted in a long time.
Probably
Am I wrong?
not. And but
He
I think
has
he's
a sort of second wind after this.
I think he's great casting because he's got the Santa Claus energy that
Yes.
was then immediately literally turned into a Santa Claus movie
Yes.
the next year. But there's there is an element to him where you're like, this guy is tricky, or like there is a little darkness.
Well,
I
the
can't
Brighton
quite
Rock,
guess at
Ten
him.
Rillington Place.
Yeah.
Like there's something sinister about
He
him.
is so
I also think it's
fucking
that
hot in
classic
Brighton Rock,
like
man.
film director thing where like all great film directors are kind of manipulators.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of like sweet talking, saying different things to different
Popping
people to get what you
champagne.
want.
Ah.
Yeah.
You're right though. It had been 14 years since he had acted in a movie when he
What was
came.
his
it was
last?
the Human Factor, the late Otto Preminger
Wild.
movie. Yeah.
You know, he's really good in the movie, and the movie's ultimate take, yes, is like he's a great showman, and he just wanted to put on a show, and he really just didn't know what he was doing, right? He didn't know what he was thinking, putting live fucking dinosaurs in the same place as
Which
people.
basically feels like the entire entertainment industry is now run by John Hammonds who don't know what they're doing.
Right.
Aren't thinking about the consequences.
Right. Or they're just, I mean, and well, there's so many jokes I could do. But like, I do think this is like a movie about like late capitalism, right? Or whatever, like that. Like, I'm not sure Spielberg is saying that when he's writing the script, but this is a movie about like the end stage of capitalism where we have the money to do this. So why wouldn't we do it? It'll make money. And it's like, because you have no control over this whatsoever.
But also like weaponized, monetized perma-adolescence.
And,
like this is one of the movies that starts to create the world that we all are guilty of living in, of just like constantly being obsessed with the things that we grew up with.
I mean, it's like the fucking Edmund Hillary, is it Edmund? Whoever said, like, why do you climb Everest? Because it's there.
Right.
Right. It's like, why would you make dinosaurs? Well, we can.
Right.
Someone else is going to do it if we don't do it. Let's do it.
But also, isn't that what every kid has dreamed of? Like, shouldn't I spend all of science, technology, all of the financial capital in the world to make little boys' dreams come true?
I want to be on the record. I think we should make dinosaurs.
I wanted to have this conversation.
I
Thank you for
kind of
bringing it
think
up,
we
Ben.
should.
The critical dynamic of the movie is at that dinner table scene, which is so beautifully lit.
Yes.
Dr. Ian Malcolm keeps pushing on Hammond and saying, you spend so much time thinking about whether you could, you didn't think about whether you should.
Iconic speech.
And obviously Ian Malcolm is the seer of this film, and he understands from the moment that he gets there, this is a bad idea.
And that's the book has the dragon spirals, which is like him.
the dragon spirals?
Like a dragon spiral. I swear I've talked about it before on this podcast, but it's like a dragon curve. Sorry, is what it's called. It's like if you just draw a line and then you draw a left and then right. Like you keep. Eventually, you make these shapes that you would never see coming. This is like fundamental chaos theory shit, where it's like you cannot predict where this is going.
Right.
And like the first chapter, you just see a little curve, and by the later chapters, there's a little picture of a dragon spiral, because the idea is it's like they never foresaw X, Y, Z.
Sure.
But so that's what Ian Malcolm is putting forward.
We're not chaos theorists. We're not DNA
Well,
geneticians.
I dabble.
You
Yeah,
consider
Ben
yourself
dabbles.
that's
Professor of chaos.
honestly, that is true.
He's not Professor Crispy. He is Professor Chaos.
Right.
Should we make? Ben wants to make dinosaurs. Like, I think we should make dinosaurs.
Yes.
I don't think we should. And this has always been my contention is
What could go wrong?
talk about how few good dinosaur films there are, right?
Yeah.
It is the struggle every one of these sequels has had is like, this is the ultimate one movie concept where you want to believe that all the characters walk away from it and have learned their lesson, and society at large learns their lesson. I'm a big defender of the Terminator franchise constantly repeating the same mistakes, because I think that speaks to something more fundamental, which is like the abstract idea of technology helping us. You could keep falling into different traps with that. The dinosaur thing is so specific that we're supposed to believe that every 4 years someone else is like, I think I know how to do it right, though.
It's really funny in Jurassic World when they're like, let's do a pterodactyl.
Yeah.
What could go wrong? It's like that's the dumbest idea
the
in
worst
the history
one.
of time.
Right. The
Don't
thing
do
where
it.
it's like build a net, I guess, around the whole park.
It's a force field. Yeah.
No, we should not be making dinosaurs, but if you do want to make dinosaurs, please do make it on fucking Isla Nublar, far away from me.
What
so
if
they
they're
can't come here.
small, though? Then
That
we could
seems
control
hard
Now
to
you're
keep
talking
track
about
of them.
pre-hysteria.
What's that?
So the Charles Band Full Moon production where it was little stop motion dinosaurs. You know what I'm talking
do.
about, the Prehistoria
I do.
franchise? Yeah. With the kid from Last Action Hero.
It's
The
a
hero-
film series you might enjoy.
Yeah.
The
Okay.
villain of this movie is Wayne Knight, Dennis Nedry, who is just like this. I mean, again, as written by Michael Crichton, this kind of like slovenly, disgusting person, right?
Sure.
Like Crichton is clearly so kind of like, ugh. But it's like he just doesn't have enough money. Richard Attenborough keeps sort of alluding to like personal choices that led him into
Which I
debt.
love.
We don't know what that is. What do we think it is?
But also, there's the thing with
he
the
sabotages the park because he needs money.
So you'll have enough money for new glasses. That's the funniest part of the movie when he's sliding down the mountain.
Getting the guy to pick up the tab, right, for his pie, where he's like, "Don't skimp out the way Hammond has."
That's how this happened in the first place.
There's a dual pronged thing of like Nedry's bad with money, but also Hammond's maybe underpaying everybody.
And I wrote this take on The Atlantic years ago, but the hero of the movie is Ray Arnold, Samuel L. Jackson's character, who is just fucking doing his job.
Yeah.
He is someone who could do
really hard.
this version of a job anywhere.
Yes.
His job is running a large sort of organization, security system park, right?
Yeah.
He could do it at Disney World. He could do it in a non-entertainment function. He got the fucking dinosaur park, right? Like that's the job he ended up
He's
getting.
also doing it humanistically. This is what I'm talking about. His character working is like every decision you're watching filter through a human face with thoughts and feelings.
There is no
filtered through the end of a cigarette.
I mean, it's a perfect performance. There is no line from him in this movie, Ray Arnold, that's like, but isn't it cool that like I run the fucking T-Rex pen? He doesn't give a shit about that. And then late in the movie, Ian is like, hey man, can you go to the other end of the park and fucking turn the lights on because we turned them off? And he's like, yeah, sure, I'll get my jacket. And then he dies off screen. And like,
right, which I believe there was
they meant to film
sequence,
his death,
and
right.
it like this is another thing that makes this movie so different from all modern blockbusters. Is Spielberg still had to deal with limitations,
right? There was like
not
a
just
storm
of technology,
and it messed with things,
but they were just like, we're not giving you extra days.
Yeah,
that scene is cut. Figure out which scene you want to cut.
And obviously we just see his hand, but there's such a tragedy to like, man, he was literally just here to make all of the things run in this absurd, stupid enterprise.
I love that solution though, to just have the hand land
it's
on
such
Laura
a good
Dern's
solution.
shoulder because it's pure like Universal monster movie, you know, where you're just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Which the movie is, you know, you were saying that it is and it isn't, but it is a movie that he watched on TV when he was 7. Like that's clearly what he's going for here.
3 or 4 things burned into his brain forever and haunted him for the rest of his life. Pulp Fiction is the year after this.
Correct.
It is.
Sam Jack is so good in this.
He's amazing. Yep.
But
this is still in his pure character actor mode before Pulp
He'll
Fiction
do anything.
Coming off Jungle Fever. Yeah.
Right. As much as he's had a few kind of like splashy performances, this guy's versatile. He's like a 5-tool player actor. He'll do whatever you ask him to do.
Right.
The next year, he's codified into Samuel L. Jackson.
Yes.
And anyone who is hiring him wants a little bit of that. Even if he's playing against type, you want some of that. Like, this is the last moment when he can sort of play this role the way he does.
He never worked with Spielberg again, right?
Which is fascinating.
Yeah, he should work with Spielberg again.
That
like
is
right
interesting.
now. Like,
Yes.
why not, right?
Yes.
And it is one of those things where everyone's like, Samuel L. Jackson, the highest grossing star of all time. Like Jurassic Park is just like a fucking footnote on that list.
Yeah.
Anyway.
He doesn't swear. It's weird.
This is
He
what I'm
says but.
saying.
He says, but, okay.
He's like a very buttoned down, tired, you know?
Yeah.
Like focused,
It's like how
moral.
Jeremy Piven was bald before he had hair. Like Samuel Jackson looks older in this movie than he does in later movies of the 90s.
Well, it's the opposite Piven. He's got hair in this.
Yeah, I guess he has little hair. But you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, you know, he hasn't like kind of glammed up, you know, to like anyway. Some of the other casting decisions, Ariana Richards, she's told this story a lot, but like they just brought her in office and they would just scream, please. And her scream was the only one who woke up Steven Spielberg's wife from the couch.
Wow.
Joe Mazzello, who had screen tested for Hook and was a little too young for it. He's just got such a sweet face.
Yeah, I've
Joe
always
Mazzello.
really liked him.
I do too. Like now as a grown-up actor, he's still got just that sweet face.
But he, off of this is like Kubrick sees this and is like, here's the guy I can make AI with. And this is when Spielberg starts getting involved in AI.
Absolutely.
Is all on the promise of like, Mazzello's my robot.
Wayne Knight, as you said, Spielberg says he watched Basic Instinct, waited for the credits to roll, and wrote down the name Wayne Knight. He was basically like, what's the name of that guy?
Yeah. Can we just like step through the Wayne Knight 90s very quickly?
Please.
Because even just the fact that he's like ping-ponging between Mad About You and Seinfeld.
Yeah.
That he's jumping between 2 NBC sitcoms that are like within the top 10. Or not Mad About You, I'm sorry, Third Rock from the Sun.
Yeah.
But like 2 huge sitcoms without getting tied down to like series regular contracts.
And your beloved Toon Sylvania.
Well, which he's great on. He plays Igor.
He does.
He closes out the decade with Toy Story 2, probably the greatest villain in cinematic history.
He's really good in Toy Story 2. Even though it's basically just like, yeah, can you do Wayne Knight? Like, you know, that guy?
But that's the thing. Like, from this point on, they're just sort of like, I think this is the movie that makes everyone realize they should be using him as a voice actor.
Right. He's got a great voice.
You like,
right.
yeah, like,
He's amazing in JFK.
JFK, Basic Instinct, like Dead Again, Jurassic Park. I mean, I'm skipping over some other things that don't really matter.
Space Jam, I think, is where most kids from that
That
time
was my
remember
activator.
him. Yeah,
To Die
absolutely.
For. Then it's like, right, he's in Hercules as a voice.
Yep.
He's in Tarzan as a voice. He's the villain in Toy Story 2. Like, that's just triumphant.
He was the voice of the Zoot Suit in My Favorite Martian.
Well, of course he was.
Remember that?
Yep.
Do you remember that?
I don't know if I ever saw My Favorite Martian.
It's not good.
That was my
Okay.
birthday movie.
Really?
Yeah. Unfortunately. That was when no movies came out in February that were worth a damn.
Rat Race.
89.
Yeah.
He's fun in Rat Race.
Yes. What does he play in Rat
I
Race
don't
again?
know. Can't remember.
Is
Oh.
Jeff Daniels is the lead of My Favorite Martian?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Christopher Lloyd.
Got to see this movie.
Elizabeth Hurley. It's not good. I think he hits Rowan Atkinson with his car in Rat Race.
Yeah.
Mm,
I think that's his role.
like you do.
So Dennis, he plays Dennis Entry. Anyway,
he's
okay.
phenomenal in this one.
They filmed the movie in Hawaii.
Mhm.
They wrapped 12 days ahead of their 82-day shooting schedule.
Despite them fighting like horrible weather conditions,
Right. Insane. Yeah,
yes.
exactly.
they
Film-
were using like the prop helicopters to actually get people off the island to safety. They lost the set.
Right.
Like, yeah.
Film is budgeted around $65 million. People claim it actually went way over. We'll
Mhm.
never know because who cares? Like it made fucking $1 billion basically.
Right.
Spielberg had gone way over budget and schedule on Hook, and I
Mhm.
think was like really intent on like, I am not doing that again.
Yeah.
And every action sequence had been storyboarded like 2 years before.
Mhm.
And Spielberg says that's why we didn't go over, but over schedule.
For sure.
Like we were just like really on top of all that stuff. And obviously the big sort of behind the scenes story with Jurassic Park is the blending of classic animatronics and CGI, brand new
Right.
CGI technology.
What was supposed to be animatronics and Go Motion, Phil Tippett's proprietary stop motion process.
Right. And instead Phil Tippett, I was going to make a joke about his Poker Face episode, but then I forgot what happens in it. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
They build a bus that they have to scan to get the eye contact of.
Don't remember.
Okay.
Excited for season 2.
Yeah. No, Phil Tippett, who had created Go Motion, which like Ed 209 and the Tauntaun and Empire Strikes Back, and had sort of figured out this evolved form of the Harryhausen craft that also involved like motion blur, allowing you to photograph stop motion in a way that more seamlessly allowed it to integrate with live action elements. That was the plan. Stan Winston will build these full body things for close-ups, for heads, whatever,
Right.
and then Tippett will do all of this. And I think they were using ILM for some amount of
Little bit
previs
of
right.
bit of CGI is going to blend in there, but that's it. And Dennis Muren is like, I think we can just fucking make dinosaurs
Well,
now.
they're the two guys, Spaz Williams, brother of Harlan Williams, creator of Puppy Dog Pals, and the other guy's name is Mark A.Z. Dippe, who later goes on to direct Spawn.
Cool.
And he did a perfect job.
They're the bad
And it
boys.
holds up beautifully.
They're the bad boys of ILM.
Yeah.
The Kasdan ILM miniseries on Disney Plus, if that hasn't already been Zaslaved off the service, is incredibly good and gets into
very
this in depth. But these two guys were like, we think we can fucking crack the code.
Right.
Have you seen Jurassic Punk? Do you know about this?
No.
It's a documentary about Steve Williams,
Okay.
and it chronicles from his perspective
Yeah.
everything that transpires as ILM is starting to make waves. And, Mark and Steve are, Dennis Muren won a lot of Academy Awards, but they
Yes.
are largely credited with effectively, like, I don't want to say inventing, but executing what becomes the template for all digitally
Yeah.
animated figures in
Dennis
movies
Muren
going
like
forward.
co-signed. He backed them up.
He supports them. He
Right.
builds this system for them at ILM.
But
But
they
those
made
two
all the
guys did.
breakthroughs.
And Jurassic
Yeah.
Punk's, Steve Williams has had a remarkable flame out in his life. It's like
Yes.
kind of a sad story. But
Both him and Dippe now have just gone on to make shitty animated films.
yes,
It's interesting.
Like Dippe directed the fucking Pete Davidson Marmaduke movie.
Yes, and they talk about that a little bit in the documentary, and it's very sad. But
Right. Not even the theatrical
No.
Marmaduke, the other one.
No, and did like 4 direct-to-video Garfield movies.
He did.
Yes.
Garfield
Yeah.
Gets
Yes.
Real, Garfield's Fun Fest, Garfield's Pet Force.
And Williams did The Wild, which is like one of the most
Mhm.
forgotten films
Do you
of
think
the
when they were
2000s.
talking to each other, though, Mark A.Z. Dippe was just like, what I really want to do is not reel Leguizamo in. Just get that guy on the hook and then let go. All right, sorry.
Yeah.
I
just think this is like this is part of the reason why I'm like, this is the beginning of something, because these two guys come up with this idea. They convince their boss that he should pitch it to Steven Spielberg, and his boss effectively pitches it to Steven Spielberg, which then more or less sidelines two of the most significant creators of on-screen effects in the previous 25 years in movies.
Tippett and Winston.
Tippett and Winston.
I mean, this is the peak of
Tippett
Winston's
famously is the
work.
one who said, I think I'm extinct, and they put that in the movie.
And has talked about, I mean, there's an incredible documentary about him as well, but he basically had like a full-on existential crisis about this. Spielberg saw that he was spiraling and basically was like, well, you know what, but they don't really know how to animate.
Right, made him the choreographer.
Right. They don't understand performance yet. So it became the stop motion was used basically as previs for them to recreate in CG, which kept him employed. And then he just pivoted to like, I guess I got to learn computers.
I particularly like what Spielberg tells the animators, which is that Tippett understands how dinosaurs move.
Yeah.
Which is like no one does. Like we don't know for sure.
Up.
Like this is just, we hope this is how dinosaurs
I
move.
also, here's what I contend. You watch Tippett's work and you're like, yeah, this guy does understand how dinosaurs move.
It feels that way.
I'm not even talking about this film, but you're like, watch Empire Strikes Back and you're like, fuck, he understands how a tauntaun moves. You're like,
true.
tauntaun's not a thing.
You're 100%
He
right.
made it up, but
he makes
see-
the movements
Yes.
feel realistic for the body we're seeing, right? This like oddly shaped thing we're seeing.
And when people talk about like why is Jurassic Park still more effective as a special effects movie than most films we see today 30 plus years later, I think the answer is that you have this melding of crafts, that you have like Winston at the top of his game, Tippett at the top of his game, and ILM like starting to push through something new. And those three concentrations meeting in the middle synthesized to like a really strong language of performance for how the dinosaurs move.
One thing that I want to say about this rewatching the movie in 4K.
I also watched it in 4K.
The daylight sequences
Look bad.
don't look good.
No.
The nighttime sequences look
You mean
incredible.
the CG
Astonishing.
specifically.
And
like
I would argue
especially Neil going
Yes.
to the Brachiosaurus
Yes.
where he's kind of gesturing at clearly nothing.
Exactly.
Like, yeah, right.
Because like the
But that's
anima-
the inverse of most movies now.
Exactly.
Right. Things
Yes.
in the dark now look terrible.
Terrible.
The lighting is horrendous
Right.
and the digital rendering is awful.
Yeah.
In the day, actually, like when you're watching a Marvel movie, you're like, oh, these
I
guys
can
are
make all
fighting.
this out.
Yeah, they're
Right.
fighting.
Right.
And it's a fascinating inversion of what we expect.
And you always are told, like, oh, why does everything look dark and bad? And like, it's CG shit. And you're like,
Right.
but that's not what I was raised learning. I was raised learning like Star Wars looked best against the black of
Exactly.
space, and it was
Yeah.
harder for them to do Hoth and stuff. I know that's pre-CG.
And I think it
you know.
was like Williams and Dippe went to Spielberg and were like, it's going to look better if you do like night. It's going to look better if you have rain, if we can have this deflection. Like they all strategized together, but there's such intentionality to how those sequences are organized. But I do think when you see the sick Triceratops on the ground and it's this incredible full body animatronic, that's like a jaw dropper.
It works completely.
All of the animatronics
It's the
are
most
so good.
magical moment of the early daylight section. But then when you get to like nighttime raptors and T-Rex, the CGI becomes like extraordinary.
But like they built a gigantic hydraulic T-Rex, obviously, that is so cool. They built raptor suits that people are inside of.
Right.
Like
They're
that,
using
you know,
every
the
technique.
Dilophosaurus is this amazing creation. Like
Yes.
that's just the rig of it in the car with the
Right.
frill, like is so cool. It's like you say, it's just it's everyone's at the top of their game. It's kind of like Total Recall. We talk about that with Total Recall too,
But
where
this-
you're like, this is the peak of this kind of like effects.
Yes.
That soon will be dying. Like this are practical effects.
There's a shot that I never processed fully that just kind of knocked me out watching it this time, where it's one of the shots in the T-Rex nighttime barrier sequence where it starts with the animatronic head like kind of coming right up to the window and then pulls away. And then within the same shot without an edit, it transitions to being a CGI T-Rex. Like he knows the blind spot that allows him to basically do the Texas switch between the two, and you buy them being the same creature.
Spielberg.
Yeah.
That guy's good.
And obviously, famously, he finished editing this film, but post was not done. They had to do lots of effects, and he just starts doing Schindler's List and would like color correct this movie at night
Insane.
over satellite or whatever.
Right. He's kind of
Completely
said
insane.
that's one of the things that helped him from like totally falling into the depths of depression during Schindler, that there was some kind of balance.
And then he goes to John Williams, and John Williams is like, "Yeah, I can crank out some bullshit for you."
He
and does the
literally
most
farts
soaring
out
epic.
this theme.
I think the music. So obviously, John Williams's music is most important to Jaws, Star Wars, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, right?
Indiana Jones.
And Indiana Jones, right?
Yeah.
And this one, in some ways, his theme is kind of incongruous with this movie.
Yes.
Because it is this triumphant theme for a closed, shitty theme park that goes wrong at the first death.
But that's why it's important, because like the theme is like this is the projection of what Hammond thought this would be, the majesty of it.
100%.
You watch the T-Rex sequence, which I feel like people agree is like the high point of the movie, right? It's like the most kind of, there is no music in that entire sequence.
Of course not. It's all the roaring.
Silence.
Right. Yeah.
Like there aren't even really like that many instances of Williams doing like a tension theme in this movie.
There's
it is
stuff,
like,
but definitely not.
There's
what
sort
I
of
think
the like, this is the Jurassic Park entrance gates music.
But the movie it does have, we're getting to the island, we're leaving the island. Triumph is essential for both of those things. So it's a very unusual score for him. It's very, very brass forward, very trumpet forward, which is not something it's not as symphonic as a lot of his scores usually are. And it does seem like it's like taking the piss, I guess, a little bit. Yeah. I don't know did they have a conversation about that? Was he just like, here's what I got for you, good luck? Like, I'd like to know a little bit more about how they landed on this style. It's very unusual. It certainly
sounds like that's what the last 20 years of their relationship has been. I don't know when that starts, where Spielberg's like, I just trust you.
I think it's
whatever
a little
your
bit of that. I mean, I think he wanted to convey a sense of awe, clearly, right? And wonder, which he's can do in space. Oh, Superman is the other one.
Oh,
those are the five. Those are the five where you're like, I mean, the whole thing I think with John Williams with Superman as well is what Bryan Singer does. Superman Returns. He's like, I'm just doing the John Williams music again. Yeah. Like, I don't want a new score.
I would contend that it's not one of his best scores, but like in terms
of, if you can.
Well, no, that is one of his best scores.
That is one of his best scores. Yeah.
No, what I was going to say is like Home Alone might be the movie
100%
where his score adds a full star.
It does. It's so weird.
It is the most transformative.
But that's another one where they're like, so this movie is about a little fucking 8-year-old beating the shit out of Joe Pesci with Pesci with metal.
If that movie doesn't have that score, it doesn't work.
Shall I conjure Christmas on a crisp December night for you perfectly so a tear freezes on your cheek?
Powerful musical embodiment.
Like, you realize that he's just like shooting marbles at a criminal.
But this is what I'm saying. If it doesn't have that score, that movie's a disaster.
You're right.
And E.T. is like a masterpiece, even if it doesn't have a single second of music.
Oh, E.T. I forgot about E.T. What's the matter with me? That's more important than any of the other ones, except for Jaws. Jaws is the most important. Or Star Wars.
The craziest thing about his career is that he was making film and TV scores for 17 years
so
before
long.
Jaws.
Yeah.
Yes. And then Jaws, he's just like, doo-doo, and Spielberg's like, I'm paying you a salary. What is this?
Yeah.
And he's like, no, it'll be good. And then George Lucas is like, you're the doo-doo guy, right? Can you do like maybe just like bring back Aaron Copland for my sci-fi movie? And he's like, yeah, sure, in my fucking sleep.
Also, JFK.
Oh, such a good score.
Incredible.
But that's
during
the
Mr. X.
We had this conversation, Griffin, when he got that Indiana Jones and the clock of bullshit store.
Yeah.
He got the Oscar nom, and I'm like, oh, the Oscars are so lazy, and they put that on, and I was like, this is an 11 out of 10. Absolutely amazing shit.
I know there was a lot of sort of autopsying of the underperformance of the
Jurassic
mangled...
Park and the Circle of Nonsense.
I was going to say...
Indiana Jones, sorry, and the Circle of Nonsense.
I think calling it Indiana Jones and the Clock of Bullshit might have been where they went wrong. That might have been a thing that turned off audiences.
Can I be honest?
Indiana Jones and the Clock of Bullshit, David.
I need to be honest.
5 comedy points.
I liked it.
You liked Dial of Destiny?
I liked it.
I don't really care
I'm going to get back to it soon, but I did not love it.
I think that has flaws.
I like sections of it. And these sections I don't like turn me off so hard, even more so than Crystal Skull, which is also a movie I like sections of.
I basically love Crystal Skull. And I think Crystal Skull really, on rewatch, really eats Dial of Destiny's lunch.
I agree
just a lot of
with
choices
that.
are made that I think are interesting, and Dial of Destiny is light on choices. Mm-hmm. The thing I like about Dial of Destiny is the last act, where there are finally some choices.
Yeah, I wish the last act was like the second act.
Yeah, and maybe the first act.
I just think the last act is like as bold a thing as you can do
I
in
think
a
the
movie
last
like
act's
that.
really interesting. But I think when we have like Phoebe Waller-Bridge in a fucking casino with him, I'm just like, this is like from Solo.
Yeah.
This is just
cosplay.
like knockoff, like just like rent a Disney movie
I
from
think it's
recently.
basically a 5-act movie, right?
Sure.
The first act I don't give a shit about at all, and in fact creeps me out.
What's
the like
first thing?
deepfake de-age
Oh,
thing,
that
don't
which
like
lasts
that.
a
I
full
don't like
25
I
minutes.
don't like that. It's too long for
Then
sure.
the New York section I like.
I like old indie,
Yes.
but it's a little sad.
My note was I just wanted him to stay at the Battle of Syracuse.
I
didn't
agree.
want him to come back. If he had stayed and he was like, I want to live
David
inside of
pushes
history,
back on this, and I
would have
agree.
No,
loved that.
I don't push back on him staying. I push back on him dying. I didn't want him to die, but him staying is kind of an interesting choice. Although, then what do we? It's like
I
there's
wish
some
the
pottery,
movie-
and he's just kind of sitting there, like
I don't
actually.
need to see it. I just need to see him like, who is
Just
the
imagine someone brushing
great
off
Roman
some
figure
pottery
that he's with at the time?
I wish the movie opened in New York,
Yeah.
didn't have the flashback,
Yeah.
Don't need the
and
flashback.
started time traveling like an hour in.
The horse thing though is incredible. That sequence is great when he gets on the horse and is racing through the subway.
I'm gonna have to
That's
rewatch
the New
it.
York section I like.
I'm gonna
Yeah,
have to
I don't-
rewatch it.
I think it's pretty good.
I like
people are really, really hard on that movie, and they're not hard on much worse Drek. In my
I like
opinion.
New York and I like ancient Rome, and
Okay.
everything else kind of is for the birds for me.
By the time this comes out,
Mhm.
A Complete Unknown will have come out. On this very day, a new Complete Unknown trailer came out, and I almost threw up watching it.
I haven't watched
You're
the trailer,
really stressed out.
but I
So
saw.
stressed
I
out.
saw.
This
the
is how I
reactions.
feel every time there's a new Toy Story movie. I'm like, don't
I was
fucking
like,
play
this
with
is
me.
disgusting to me. That's how I felt watching it.
I went to see The Substance with my mother, which was a very fascinating experience.
Speaking of throwing up.
Yep. And she turned to me during the Complete Unknown trailer and just went, he doesn't have the arrogance. That was her take on Timmy,
Too winsome.
which has been sticking with me. He doesn't have the arrogance.
New trailer tries to sell that hard. I'm not sure it gets there.
Anyway, by the time this episode comes out, Timothée Chalamet is probably won Best Actor.
That's probably true.
If Timothy, he's not going to. So thank God he won't do it.
But
and
make
it's
your
all-
prediction. What were you about to say?
No, it would be crazy if like another music biopic performance in a shit ass movie wins, and then people are like, "What happened there?"
That's why
almost
I wouldn't
immediately after.
bet against it.
Yeah, seriously. Okay, let's talk about the film.
This
is it
movie
good?
opens with a very Jaws-like
yeah.
sequence, right? This sort of, you're not seeing the dinosaurs.
A
it's
sequence you kind of
suggestion, it's
always
silent.
forget.
Yeah.
I would say, even as someone who's seen this movie 1 million times, you always forget it opens with creepy music.
Yep.
Over these kind of ominous titles, and then this kind of like monster sequence.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Characters we're largely not going to see ever again.
Nope.
It's silence and faces and roars and brutality. Yeah.
Do we need this?
I do think it's helps
I think you
to
need it
set
because
up
the
the
movie
world in
takes-
the way we were saying of like,
The movie takes so long to get to the action,
yes.
not in a complaining way. It
Yes.
just does.
You need a little action up
So
front.
maybe you just need a little kind of activation
This
at the
is
start.
Such a cliche structure now.
Yes.
This like little tease of the world we're going to go to with some violence
Uh-huh.
that maybe it just feels more rote in
I
the
think so.
aftermath.
I think here's what specifically helps, what the sequence helps with in the rest of the film. One, setting up that we're not going to see this much staff later. We're not going to see all the different departments.
Right. They're setting up why they need in safety inspection and like experts, right? I guess that's the sort of right.
I also think talking about the cynicism of this movie, there's something very pointed in like it opening with a death that is never commented on again,
Mhm.
right? That the movie starts to be like, oh, and Hammond's grandchildren are in danger. For the first time, he's starting to question the morality of what he's built.
It's a good note. That
But
makes
you're
sense.
like, there has been this sort of rounding error in setting up this park of like, how many fucking guys have died just trying to transport these dinosaurs?
Right. Just like literally figuring out the basics of like what do we keep them in?
Right. I think there's a helpful extrapolation in watching this sequence and being able to then copy paste in your mind. Like, so this has probably happened 100 times. This is happening simultaneously across different parts of the park every day.
This is also just a point that the movie sort of makes and then has to just, and then we don't worry about it because everything goes wrong. But like this would be largely bad, right?
Sure.
The park experience, they're nowhere near like figuring out how it works.
No.
Because it seems to be basically like, okay, you see some brachiosauruses or something, right? The sort of, they're easier to see because they're chill, right?
Yeah.
But then the T-Rex experience is basically like drive by this paddock that's probably like a fucking 1,000 acres. Maybe we drop a goat over there and we'll see some trees rustle. Like what's the plan?
Well, as a frequent attendee of the zoo
Yes,
with
I
my
am
young
also,
child,
right?
This is kind of what it's like to
kind
go
of
to
what
the zoo.
is like.
Where you're like, you go to the tiger cage and they're like, oh, tigers are sleeping. Sorry, come back
Yeah.
next time. There'll be another $40.
It-
You know, like that's kind of
Right.
how they do
Gotta
it. at the
become
zoo.
a
The
member.
suggestion,
I
I
am a
think
member,
I saw
actually,
one.
but yeah. What's that?
No, that the suggestion of like, oh fuck, I think I saw one.
Right,
Yeah.
right. exactly.
I guess you're right.
That keeps you on the line.
It's just like you're not gonna. How are you ever gonna see the raptors? They're like hunting animals that like hide
that's a good point.
in the fucking grass.
It's what you just said. They haven't really thought this through yet. They're still like field testing.
And don't get me started on Jurassic World inventing an invisible dinosaur. You want to see the dinosaur. What is the thinking there, my friends? Why would you make it invisible?
It is wild.
Because they can, David.
And of course, I always cite Dan Harmon's rant about in that movie, Chris Pratt saying like, so you invented like a new kind of dinosaur that turns invisible and is crazy? Seems like a bad idea. And just Harmon being like, if someone has to say that out loud, your movie is fundamentally fucked up. Like, we know you don't need someone to say that. And this movie has the way better version of it, which is like Malcolm being like, you're grappling with forces you don't understand. Like, he crystallizes in a much more interesting way.
But also that Hammond's like, the thing is, the wonder is that we all like get to be close to and possibly touch these things that have always felt mythological. But as you said, the thing that's so compelling to children is this was real. Like from a young age, you're starting to have these like mythologies popped of like, well, that's like fantasy.
There's no tooth fairy.
This is like fairy tales. And then you get
Iron
older
Man
and then
doesn't show up
all
for
these
less than
things
$80
are
million
eliminated.
bucks.
But you're like, dinosaurs are the one thing that feel magical to you as a child and remain real, even though you don't get to make contact with them. It feels like Hammond's like, oh, there's some degree of like people want to feel the danger. But they even talk about they've built in this thing of, what is it? The fucking lyceum, like the thing they don't have in their DNA strand that can deactivate the dinosaurs if they get off the island.
That is, yes, that's true. They need a particular enzyme that they only get from the park and they'll die. But like,
versus the Jurassic World movies are like, we have to make these more dangerous. How do we make them deadlier? You're like, the takeaway from this would be these people still are on this like quixotic quest to figure out how to tame dinosaurs, and they think if we neuter them a little bit more, they'll be safe.
We can control it. I mean,
why would you make
Jurassic Park is a movie about science thinking it can control nature and it can't. Jurassic World is a movie about like
franchise
Lego sequels are out of control and like every sequel has to be more
how to make an
bigger than the
invisible
last.
T-Rex with knife teeth.
I mean, so we begin with the raptor sequence where we don't see a raptor, we just see death and chaos.
Mm-hmm.
And so, okay, let's meet Alan Grant and Ellie Sattler. They're paleontologists who are out on a dig. How do we get to know Alan Grant? How about he's just like an absolute demon to this kid who
snarky
poo-poos,
little kid
velociraptors for being small.
That's one of my least favorite fucking online fan theories.
Oh, that he turned out to be Chris Pratt?
Yeah. Owen
Why
Brady.
do we let these things into our life?
I know. Whoever posted that originally, I hope, is in Guantanamo.
Now, this movie obviously and the book made velociraptors famous.
Yes.
Velociraptors are actually smaller than they were depicted in the movie. They're more like kind of turkey-sized.
Interesting.
And it's Deinonychus, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. That would be more like this big sort of pack hunting animal, I guess. But also, I think
it makes them the coolest dinosaurs in a way they definitely weren't before the 90s.
Right. This is like their fame. Obviously, there's a fucking basketball team called the Raptors because of this movie, right?
But yeah, no,
every kid our age grew up being like number one coolest dinosaurs, the velociraptor.
Right, which is just them doing the math of like, we need to have dinosaurs who can walk through doors. We need dinosaurs who are the exact right size to be a little bigger than kids.
Well, and also this movie is just like, can we make Alien for 8-year-olds?
Right.
Because that's what the velociraptor is, where you're just like a perfect killing machine that has no feelings. Whereas the T-Rex is a hero in the movie, basically.
Do we think they overstate the power of the raptor?
Like in the Alan scene where he's talking about then they're fucking closing in.
Yeah.
But isn't that basically PR of them being like, people are going into this movie, they don't know shit about raptors. We need Alan Grant's instructional at the beginning of the movie to be telling you how deadly a raptor is, so you have that in your back pocket.
That's what I mean. Like, are they relative to what we actually believe is true of raptors? Did they make them more of a killing machine?
Yeah, they made them into xenomorphs.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I do think it works in the movie because anytime someone is outside in the last act of the movie, you are scared.
Right.
And that sequence where Ellie, where the hunter guy, what's the hunter guy's name? Muldoon is like, we're being hunted, Bob Peck. And she just runs. And Spielberg, and she does the thing where she swings from the tree. And you're like, she's got 5 seconds. You believe it, right? Before like a raptor's just going to take her out.
But it's the fucking classic Spielberg shit of just like, don't introduce pieces onto the chessboard too early. Don't introduce anything that is irrelevant You know, like you set up the idea of the raptor that is just sort of seems like a toss off of like showing how bad this guy is with kids.
Right.
But it's like, no, the last act of this movie is going to be the raptors. They can be indoors.
Right.
They can be anywhere. They're fast. They're small. Yeah.
But also the raptors, it's like they're just true villains that you can't root for, and the T-Rex is kind of a hero that you love in this movie, right?
That's a good point.
Like he gets the victory in the movie. He takes down the raptors. They don't get any victory. They don't take down shit.
Right.
Yeah.
They don't kill one fucking dinosaur in this movie.
That is
All the little Bens of the world are like T-Rex, man. Fucking
he's the
T-Rex
king.
is the man.
Yes.
Absolutely.
and like
He's huge. He's got a big ass jaw.
his roar is the coolest like bit of sound design in the
Yes,
movie.
it
Obviously,
is.
we should say she.
Although, yeah, well, they're all women, right?
Yeah.
This is a.
Although
you know,
some of
they're
them
all female.
are flip flopping
That's-
with that frog DNA.
That's what's going on, right?
Yeah.
They're making eggs.
Life
finds a way. Blah blah blah.
That happened pretty quick, didn't it?
Yes.
Wouldn't you think evolutionarily that would have taken a little bit more time?
How long this has all been going on? I think if you dive deep on that,
Imagine R&D was pretty intense and drawn out
I think
on
it was
Jurassic
5
Park.
years, 25 years? How long are we talking here?
I think
That's a good
they made
question.
dinosaurs.
I think between 5 and 10 is my guess.
5 and 10. Okay.
Yeah. Like I think these dinosaurs have been on this land in some form for multiple years before our characters are visiting.
So this
our
is
heroes.
an important part of this story. Obviously, the Gennaro character is introduced because he's there to really check up on behalf of the investors as to how this is all going.
Right.
But it's like, we're good. Like they made the dinosaurs. Like the investors should be nervous if they can't make the dinosaurs.
but
Once you
Gennaro
make them,
doesn't
it's like
know
we're good to
that.
go.
Right? Isn't the idea that Gennaro is
He
like
doesn't know.
Well,
that.
why is Hammond not telling anyone that they've got hundreds of dinosaurs
I
on
mean,
this
this
island?
is- right.
Look,
You have to fill
these
in your
are all
own
fair
backstory.
notes, and I think the best way to think about it is because he's afraid of corporate plundering, right? Like because he's afraid of what will happen. That someone will be like, "Wait, the crazy guy
Okay.
did it?"
You think there's like lots of NDAs here for all the
my guess
employees
is
of
also,
Island
I mean, you have
Noir?
to fill in blanks here, but that like Hammond is coming off of a Disney World level success where he, dare I say it, has blank check status, where he's going around to people and he's like, hey, here's my new project. You can buy in. I don't tell you anything about it. Like he's going like Mike Lee rules. I need investors. There's no script. I pick the cast.
He does kind of
And
look
you
like
get to
Mike
see
Lee.
it when the cut is done. Mike Lee would have been great as John Hammond.
A little grouchy.
Yeah, I think they would have been a
Grouchy.
grouchier, but more closer to the book, possibly.
But that's my read, is that like he has had some series of successes that are so undeniable that he goes and pitches a blind project that's like, it's going to take 10 years. I need this amount of money. You have this percentage. I don't tell you what it is until it's done. And Gennaro is the first guy on behalf of all these investors who is seeing the thing. Not just seeing it, but for the first time being like, that's what the concept is?
Isn't it weird that all of our P.T. Barnum figures are just into tech and politics now, and they're not into making shit that we like that's fun?
and like tweeting.
It sucks.
They're just like the best thing you can do as a rich guy is to fucking use your
This
phone.
is why fucking Megalopolis is a benevolent act.
Sure.
Because I'm like, this
I
is
don't
what
disagree with
our
that.
weird rich men used to do.
Right. Gaze into my mind.
Yeah.
And you're like, whoa, okay.
Right. I'm like, whether or not you like it is irrelevant. This
Yeah.
is like the best way people can spend money.
Your mind is full of John Voight's boner?
Yeah. You love Hudson Yards? This is my big take, is Megalopolis is about Francis Ford Coppola
taking
being
a
like,
stroll.
The vessel.
they did it. These sons of he responded to Hudson Yards the way Gennaro looked at it
So,
at Jurassic Park.
yes, everyone is brought to Jurassic Park, but really we only see Grant and Ellie getting the pitch. Like the
Yes.
kids show up out of nowhere. Ian shows up basically out of nowhere.
Mhm.
Gennaro, and they get the hard sell and they love it. They see the Brachiosaurus. They're amazed. It's the most famous Spielberg face of all time, right?
Yes.
Is the two of them seeing the
Pulling the
dinosaur.
glasses
Right.
off
It gives
the
you
face,
several
yes.
consecutive, him physically turning her head. But
Brilliant.
you already have a little bit of like, she's calling out the plant life.
Mhm.
Yep.
Is this incompatible?
Right,
Like
you
they're
just got this
asking
'cause it looks
follow-up
cool.
questions that start to be like,
Maybe I'm a dumb movie watcher, but I think it was literally this time around where I realized she was a paleobotanist.
She's a paleobotanist.
I was like, she's a
baby.
paleontologist, just
Yeah.
like this
No.
other guy, but that's
No,
not what she's there for the plants.
She's all
there
about
for
that
the
plant
plants,
life.
which I
Yeah.
guess they're also creating. By the way, they don't even get into how they're.
Well, she
creating.
talks about the
it's
different,
extinct plants.
But like, how are they doing that?
Good point.
Cool.
Where's Mr. DNA for that one?
plant DNA.
Yeah, see, I'm a mosquito, and I'm like, all right, fine, I'm a
Yeah.
mosquito.
The
I mean-
mosquito thing, when I did finally see this movie at whatever age as a child on TV or VHS after Lost World, The sap thing, I was like, holy, because I just saw Lost
bought
World
it.
on its own. And I was like, I'm just taking this as a given. They brought dinosaurs back. I didn't know what the answer was. The sap thing, I was just like, this is the smartest movie solve I've ever seen. And I still kind of feel that way 30 years later.
It is Crichton's idea, right?
Yes,
I mean,
yeah,
Crichton
100%.
completely came up
That's
with
the
that.
$1 trillion idea.
It's Crichton taking real science and combining it with pseudoscience, which is like what he would
does,
do.
yeah.
But it's
and
perfect.
it's really clever.
It's perfect,
Right.
like pulp logic.
Taking an idea and then bridging it with essentially fantasy, because I think there's like, it's like there's no DNA that old that you could ever find.
Right.
You could find old DNA, but not
Yeah.
65 million years. That's ludicrous.
Mhm.
And even if you did, right, you can't just then be like, boop,
Yeah.
boing, you know, and then like it turns into all the DNA or whatever it is the idea is. Like, but
Missing
like,
pieces, just so some
it doesn't
frog in
matter.
there. We're all
The
good.
DNA sequence in the movie, the mystery that you're just like, yep,
Slam dunk.
this can
Wow, they
happen
did it.
right now.
And I love that
I
it's like
completely buy this.
the carousel of progress. You're the rotating audience,
Yes.
seeing the glimpses of these different like offices.
And then, I mean, I love them interrupting the ride.
Yeah.
Like them being, you know, Attenborough being like, do you get it? Do you get it? And then at a certain point, they're like, wait a fucking second.
Right.
Like, are those T-Rex eggs? Like, how do I get this bar off of me?
yes,
And
which is what I think they all play very well is if you've devoted your life to these studies and then you find out like, wait a second, this guy's been doing this shit for 8 years in private.
some asshole just has like a grow light.
They have like a
Eggs are
logo
under
and uniforms. Like this has just been happening. The merch is already on shelves.
Is there what? I mean, is there anything like that happening right now in the world?
This is, I mean, I think this is what is part of what makes this premise so compelling that none of the sequels can replicate
Yeah.
is the discovery. David and I talk a lot about Men in Black
Sure.
as another franchise we're obsessed with, where none of the sequels can overcome the problem of the reveal of the first time someone
It's
finds
what
out,
you're in for.
holy shit,
The
this has been
core
going
premise,
on
right.
the whole
I
time.
mean, Men in Black is a 97-minute movie where the first hour is like, let's explain what the Men in Black are. And then they're like,
Right.
and now one sequence and we're done. Bye-bye.
Right.
Like, and
Yeah.
you're like, I'm perfectly satisfied.
But anytime you can build a movie premise around, hey, you, the average civilian, had no idea this has been going on for years, it's like
That's
money in
JFK
the
for
bank.
me, guys. That's how I felt watching JFK.
Yeah.
I was like, so the paramilitary forces of the United States
It's
and
an
America have
amazing
been
what
pushed.
if premise.
The graphic design is like, I think, so important to the movie.
Oh, yeah.
It's so good.
But this is the like Spielberg,
In
like
that
fucking
slightly
Universal
cheesy
consultant
way, right.
where it's like you would buy. Whereas I think a lot of movies like this, I'm like, that wouldn't be successful.
So the book, it's not because that the logo is from the film. It's
Yes.
not from the books. Eventually, start using the logo,
No,
but
but the original
the-
book
yes,
cover was
that-
just this.
exactly,
Which
yeah.
is the silhouette is
it's
there.
already
It worked.
compelling.
Yeah,
yes.
it looked good. It looked good. I don't.
But
where did I
every
buy that?
element of,
Walden
like,
Books,
the
wherever I bought it.
font,
Yeah.
You tell me.
The logo, it's also evocative. I love when you get to the merch store, you have that panning shot of the merch store.
Well, of course you would.
Well, of course, I love that. But all the dinosaurs are brightly colored,
Mhm.
where there's that sense of like, well, kids don't want to buy the realistic looking ones.
Right.
The T-Rex
Right.
has to be purple.
So they are shown the park. They are impressed, and
Mm-hmm.
then they all sit down and are like, "This is disgusting. You have essentially defied the laws of God.
Right.
Like, what are you doing here?" And also, there seem to be only like 6 employees. Is anyone like watching the store essentially? And when you have lines like Muldoon being like, "I told you to put fucking locks on the car," you're like, nobody thought to put locks on the car in the theme park? Like, but you kind of buy it as that this is kind of like a half-assed operation in some ways because it's all been about making the dinosaurs. We'll figure out the rest later, right?
Mm-hmm.
I once helped launch a startup. It's extremely hard, and there's a lot of things that you forget about. It's not easy to just think of everything, and especially when you're making dinosaurs.
Yes.
You got to think of a lot of stuff.
And that's, I mean, launching the Ringer was as hard as cloning dinosaurs from Amber.
And now
right?
we are dinosaurs.
But did you
So
ever-
it all worked out perfectly.
Did you ever, in the process, consider whether or not you should?
I think about it every day now, actually.
As you build video ready podcast studios
Exactly.
or whatever. Yes.
A paddock of sorts.
Mhm. So, interspersed with this, we do have the scene where Dennis Nedry meets with a character that will later be played by Campbell Scott, right?
And in this film is played by a convicted sex offender.
Oh, really?
That's why he doesn't come back.
I don't think that's the only reason why he doesn't come back. He doesn't make a huge impression.
I'd argue that's the main
Cameron
reason.
Thor. Well, I imagine they were like, let's get a big shot actor here. But yeah, okay, we got Cameron
But
Thor.
also, we legally can't bring this guy to set.
Oh, boy.
Bad story.
But yes.
But yes, he's introduced earlier than Ian Malcolm, than the kids.
Yeah, like the sort of...
This is
the wrench in the works.
This is like, all the fucking Spielberg shit where he just has such a good innate sense of like what order audiences need to process information in.
This place is dangerous.
Yeah.
Alan Grant is not good with kids.
Yeah.
Dinosaurs exist.
But also, like, Nedry's going to die at the halfway point.
Yep.
So we need to introduce him early.
Yep.
You can't just introduce him when the characters would meet him for the first time. You have to start developing this, laying track for this. Yeah.
Wayne Knight is phenomenal in the scene with Dodgson.
Him
Him saying Dodgson's here, so funny.
Yeah.
Him cackling at the spray can is so good, because that's how I would react to that, where I would just be like, what is this James Bond ass shit you made for this like active subterfuge where I'm basically just putting some embryos in a freezer, but no, it's this like adorable, like it works, him putting the foam on the
you're dead on
the
though,
pie.
Sean, where like I saw Space Jam with my dad and my brother and I was like, holy shit, people can be like that.
Yes.
Like I was just like, to me it was like I had just seen a T-Rex in real life. I was like, Wayne Knight, my dad was like, he's in a ton of stuff.
He's a human cartoon.
Do you think Barbasol paid to get their name on the can, or they asked?
I think so.
Okay. It's just like, it's so huge for Barbasol.
Huge.
It's an interesting question. That was my shaving cream of choice circa this time
because
on Halloween.
Oh, sure.
That we were sort of all shaving creaming each other and the local neighborhood, and then the parents were like, that's going to wipe the paint off of my house. Don't put that on my house.
I imagine it's like the E.T. Reese's Pieces thing, where M&M's was like, we don't want E.T. eating M&M's. He looks ugly. And then Reese's Pieces laughed all the way to the bank. Like, if they go to Gillette's like, what, you're fucking smuggling DNA inside our can? We don't want that association. Like, Barbasol's kind of like a little bit more of an old-timey brand. They're not hip.
That's right.
And they get the bump from this.
I just feel like it speaks well of them that their product still works with embryos
incredibly well.
And then it's really just it's one night. The rest of the movie, right? It's like Nedry fucks up the park in the evening. I think another bit of brilliant Wayne Knighterly is his like seething arrogance when he's sitting there at his console and he's like, no one could do what I have done, 2 million lines of code or whatever. And then his pathetic performance is like, I'm just going to the vending machine to don't mind if some things turn off and I'll see you guys later.
I'm
Sam
being
Jackson's
very
just
normal right now, just making sure you guys know
clearly,
I'm being normal.
This
Samuel
is
Jackson's
why,
just like, I hate this man. I wish him to stop speaking.
Well, also, the hubris is hitting like a day too early.
Right.
He should start feeling this cocky after he sold the embryos.
Right.
But
I don't
he's already just sort of like, I'm the master of the universe.
But to get out and do what he needs to do, he needs to shut down the security in the entire park.
You're just going to have to go with
There's just no way to get out. You can't just like turn off one door.
You'd think he could just turn off one door.
This is a dinosaur park.
This is the hubris. He's not thinking through things clearly. He's just convinced that he can pull it off.
What is his, like, if it were to go successfully, how is he supposed to hand it off to the guy at the boat and then get back to his desk in 18 minutes?
He's not getting on the boat, right? He's just making a handoff to the boat.
Yes.
And I guess he then gets $1.5 million, right? That's the number.
Yeah.
It's like a good amount of money, but it's like
he should have asked for a lot more.
Right. It's probably worth billions as corporate.
Like world-class corporate espionage, too. Like a huge, I don't know if it's illegal in Costa Rica, but I mean, isn't he going to prison for like
Probably. I mean, but also, isn't what they're doing illegal? Like, this is the other question.
I mean, this is why I asked if who was on your supporting actor ballot, because like
there's an argument
the
for
huge
Knight.
choice and the obvious choice and the undeniable choice in a lot of ways. Wayne Knight is so fucking effective in this movie, and in a way where you're just like, if he's 10 degrees smaller, it's not popping in the same way, and if he's 10 degrees bigger, it like unbalances the whole film.
Right.
It might even be a matter of like 2 degrees in either direction, and he's off. And you're right, he plays the balance, all the arcs of like...
He probably only has, 10 minutes in the movie. It's just it's a Dion Waiters-esque performance. I'm just going to keep doing rewatchables terminology.
Sure.
But everyone in this movie is Dion Waitersing it up, right?
Yeah.
Even B.D. Wong, sure, he really just gets the one scene,
But
right?
he fucking
That
nails
scene is so
He makes
powerful.
a huge impression.
He makes a huge impression
Yes.
because you're like, this seems like a good person.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And he seems to be almost just kind of doing this out of love. Like the hatching scene is this like lovely scene.
Right.
Right. And and it's just, you're like, this is a huge mistake. And of course, the best part being they have hatched a velociraptor.
Right.
Where they're like, oh, so what is this cute little thing? And it's like God's perfect killing machine. And we're going to start feeding it so it gets big.
He makes such a huge impression that Trevorrow decides to make him the Emperor Palpatine, Obi-Wan Kenobi of his trilogy.
I think
they can't decide which one it is. They keep going back and forth.
I think it's partly that B.D. Wong sort of just had such a long, impressive career, right?
Yes.
So by the time the Lego sequels come around, it's like that's a fucking vein to tap. Bring back B.D. Wong, right?
Well, I think the other part of it, I think there's some just sort of hard math of it, of like, okay, we bring back one legacy character,
right?
Like Malcolm, Sattler, and Grant all did sequels. Attenborough's dead. Right? Like Nedry's dead canonically within the film.
As is Sam Jackson.
Right.
The kids, like, no one's going to recognize. Yeah.
Right. You're like, by default, I guess B.D. Wong is the most powerful person to bring back.
You're right. And then, of course, then they brought back the real stars, locusts.
Love those locusts.
Yeah. And, but, you know, the film's perfectly structured, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
In that you are getting all of this explanation in the middle of Spielbergian wonder, the Triceratops, the Brachiosaurus, the egg hatching,
It's
and all
the
that.
balance. He's just got like such a good like eye on the clock of like, without feeling schematic of like, okay, every 10 minutes there has to be awe.
Right.
It doesn't feel as like diagrammed as that.
Right, which again, not to keep bringing up the fucking Jurassic World, but those movies have that problem.
Yes.
The classic MCU thing of just like, it's been 20 minutes, time for an action sequence.
But also just the feeling of like, why is Ephraim Khan in this movie? Like, what are we accomplishing by including his character? He gets killed off and you're just like, this felt like a waste of time.
Yeah.
He doesn't really add anything to the narrative. Those movies are setting up so many things where you're like, I don't know if this is seeding for future films or these are the vestiges of a previous draft or what.
Well, that's
and this movie, it's what you said, came in and was just like, fucking focus it, narrow it down.
And what I love about, everything pops off while they are on the T-Rex tour.
Yeah.
And I love that everyone is on the T-Rex tour. They are all awed by the majesty of the science.
Mm-hmm.
They are not that interested in the park.
Right.
Right. Like they're actually here to evaluate a theme park, right?
Yes.
In a way. And he's like, take the ride. And the ride sucks. And they're all just sitting in the car. And the movie's energy is starting to be like, are we going to get to something?
Yeah.
Right. Like it's perfectly timed within the structure of the movie for them to finally, for shit to get real.
The perfect storm of all these elements colliding at the same time, namely a storm happening at the same time that Nedry is pulling his shit.
It's everyone on the beach at Amity Island.
And
that's what it
right.
is.
Right.
We've all gone to the beach. We know
T-Rex.
something's going to happen.
Right.
Yes.
And the T-Rex shows up and it is the most like consequentially, like it's just like the expectations for the T-Rex could not be higher in this movie. And the movie like surpasses them by so much.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I was convulsing in my chair at 11 years old. I couldn't believe how cool it was.
Is there anything like that since Jurassic Park? I'm fucking serious.
Honestly,
No,
Avatar,
I'm thinking
Avatar
deeply.
legitimately, the first time I've told this story many times before, the first time I saw Avatar,
hell yeah to Avatar.
At the Lincoln Center AMC, and my jaw was on the floor.
Look,
on the floor.
We stand Avatar in this house. We love Avatar. I don't think
there's not one thing in Avatar.
It's not the one thing.
I mean, as much as I have respect for the mighty Ikron, of course, and Taruk Maktov.
I think as soon as we get into that first night sequence,
I fucking love it. You're not
on Pandora.
Titanic is similar
you don't
in terms of like Titanic. When to me the most I can't believe I'm seeing this moment in Titanic is the water coming through the dome.
Sure,
where you're just like, that's real water.
Yes.
Like those people are being drowned in 1 billion gallons of water.
But I agree with you that like
Lord of the Rings is sort of like maybe the Balrog, but like there's not quite anything like
this. It's a great movie
this.
moment, but it doesn't feel the same.
Yeah.
It's the one, and what's incredible about it is they basically pulled off the awe-inspiring, positive, romantic version of this moment with the reveal of the Brachiosaurs and like nailed that. And then for the second time, like 45 minutes later, they do the inverse of that, which is like, what is the ultimate terror? I I don't think there's the purity of
he's
it,
so
the cleanness.
majestic.
Yes.
She's so majestic, the T-Rex.
Rexy.
And the entire sequence, you're also just like, this is completely out of control. This is an animal. Right? Like, and the way it behaves is so perfect where it's just, where it bites the underside of the car, right? Like, it's like, you know, like things like that where you're just like, right, they have no control over this.
Yes.
Like, it's just rampaging around like any animal would. It looks like a puppy in a way.
Wasn't one of the key T-Rex facts that I learned as a kid that they have small brains? That they're not smart, that there are smart dinosaurs in this world, but T-Rexes, while great killers, are not intelligent.
I think
Tiny
there's
arms.
tons of debate over this now, but at the time, that's what we were being told. Right, that they were stupid.
Yeah.
So that animal instinct that you're talking about, where it's actually not good at hunting down all of this raw flesh
Because
that
it's
has been
so
served
big.
up to it. Yeah.
But that's what's scary about it too, is you're like, you can't pathologize this thing.
Right. But you kind of love it. The raptors, you're like, I'm terrified of those things. Get them out of here. Shoot them in the head. Which is why World making the choice of like, they're our friends now was kind of a bold one in a way, but then it's also just kind of annoying to me.
Yeah.
Because I just want them to be the xenomorph. Like, if there's ever the fucking alien movie where there's someone who's like, I have tamed an alien, I'm going to be so mad.
It's, I would say it is inevitable.
It feels inevitable, right? One day there'll be it'll do the Walking Dead thing as someone's got an alien on a chain.
Right.
Romulus, yay or nay?
Didn't see. I had twins, bro.
I give it an okay. I put it right in the middle. I had a good time while watching it.
I'm a soft yay.
I'm a soft yay. The softest of yays,
see Romulus?
possibly.
I did not. I don't even have a good excuse. I just was kind of like, I'll get to it.
There's some Ben stuff in it for
There's
sure.
some real Ben
Yeah,
stuff.
It's gooey.
Yeah.
It's got to be gooey.
I'm sure there's chains.
I mean, if Fede Alvarez like remade Kate and Leopold, it would be like full of goo. Like it'd be like, where'd all this goo come from? He's like, I can't help it.
If he
Where
remade
does mist
Sleepless
come
in
from?
Seattle, it would be full of
Really dark in this chamber.
Oh boy.
I kind of love how Jurassic Park is a little gross.
It is.
Very gross.
I like how it's sweaty,
sweaty, rainy, gooey, slimy.
the snotty
I
moment.
was gonna say dinosaurs sneezing on kids.
Big poop diamonds, you know?
Yeah. Even that is just like, it's a movie that goes out of its way to not blarp its characters, to take back an old term in our terminology, right?
I mean, this movie is no Lost in Space, to be clear.
Of course. But you got to like split up the crew into a couple little smaller teams. I'm just like, she needs to stay and focus on the poop. Is such a good way to split her off, to be able to have splinter units that doesn't feel like the movie's disregarding her.
No, I think she has. I mean, people,
she
I've
stays
heard that
present.
complaint
She doesn't
that she has
disappear.
less of an arc, but obviously Alan's is really the only arc because Malcolm gets pseudo killed off.
Yeah.
I mean, the movie doesn't actually kill him off, but it's sort of like, okay, bye, Ian.
He just gets to be the vocal conscience.
Right, he's
of
just
the
like,
movie.
I was right.
Yeah.
You know, like
She's the one who's like going out and actually facing shit. Like she, in a lot of ways, is the most conventional action hero of the movie because Malcolm's laid up for the second half and Grant's primary thing is keeping the kids safe. She's like going out and solving shit.
Her limp is burned into my mind. You know, her dragging her leg, running towards Sam Neill. You know?
Yes.
I mean, and Dern doing that face that she does in every David Lynch movie, this sort of strained face, like, is perfect. The stuff with Alan and the kids, I feel like at the time critics were like warm
Spielberg's
but not
going
in
soft.
love with this movie.
Yeah.
But right, it's part of their like, I saw Hook. This guy is cooked, man. He can't help with this treacly
everyone
kid
was like,
shit.
this is better than Hook, but like he's been domesticated. He'll never
Right.
make a movie as nasty as Jaws again. Raiders has like more grit and edge.
100%. Even E.T. has this sort of darker energy to it, even though it's about kids and stuff. And like, I watch this stuff now, and the stuff with the kids, I think, is very, very effective.
Yeah.
Because the kids are not really annoying.
Yeah.
Ariana Richards does a great scream. And like, yes, okay, it's a little annoying when she says it's a Unix system. I mean, it's an awesome moment as like a meme now.
Very hacker forward film.
Like,
Yes.
It's really funny at the moment where you're like, oh, they're giving her something to do. Great. But like, Mazzello saying he threw up it always gets me because there's a T-Rex. He doesn't need to explain why he threw up.
Yeah.
But it's such a vulnerable kid thing to do.
Yes.
He's embarrassed.
No, I mean,
And like Alan being like, that's fine, it's okay. Like it's like a moment you would have at like a daycare, but it's like after a T-Rex knocked a Jeep over a cliff.
I talk a lot about time I spent with my little cousin, who I love. Is a great kid. And it was just startling to watch this movie and be like, man, they really nailed this age group.
Right,
of
what that kid is like.
When I hang out with him and he just wants to tell me facts that he's just learned or ask me questions about the facts he hasn't got an answer to yet.
So real.
100%.
You know, like we have a shared interest.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I know about dinosaurs? And what do you know about dinosaurs that I don't know?
My
like,
nephew
that's
Jack
how we
is the
talk about
exact same
Marvel.
way. He
Right.
loves dinosaurs, and every time I see him, here's my new favorite.
Yeah.
Here
I
are
mean,
the
that's
things
why
I know about it.
That's just going to be a golden era for me as a dad because I have so much useless shit in
Why
my
do you think I like hanging out with this 9-year-old?
I know why you're
Because he's
you're
like,
very
who's
good with
Dr. Doom?
children.
And I'm like, who's Dr. Doom?
Here we
Let's
go,
fucking
baby.
go.
But I think the stuff with the kids mostly works, and it's also not a huge part of the movie. You have the tree sequence, which is nice, and you have the fence sequence, which is intense,
Scary.
Right.
Yeah.
The other thing too, I think related to the critics point that you were making is historically critics who are often older, usually in the back half of their life, if they are of some stature in the culture, are terrible on horror. And this is a horror movie.
Yes.
You know, it has all the hallmarks of a horror movie structurally, all the big scare moments. It is a very high-minded science fiction adventure movie. But
And it's
at
a
its
roller
heart,
coaster movie.
Yeah,
Yes.
but at its heart, it's horror. And middle-aged critics stink on horror. They almost always do. I'm very conscious of this as I get into that phase of my life because you've lost a kind of essence of what appeals to young people who love to feel this way.
Right.
And this is a movie made for young people to make them excited and make them understand, like, the way you felt when you were 6 when you discovered dinosaurs, that you could still have that when you're 60 in John Hammond. It's like a brilliant fusion. So I tend to not take criticism of deep genre very seriously, no matter when it's come around.
I mean, unless you're looking in like Fangoria or whatever,
Sure.
like where there were appreciators of genre as it came, right? Like, I mean, Pauline Kael like loved Spielberg. We'll talk about
Was
it
one of his
earlier.
earliest champions.
And then, like, when Raiders comes out, she's like, he's become this fucking machine guy. Like, I hate this shit. This is just a theme park now. And there's no, it's so funny to read her Raiders review where she's just like, there's no exhilaration in it. And you're like, it's Raiders of the Lost
It's
Ark.
built for
it's the most exhilarating ride of the year.
Are you out of your mind, Pauline?
Even though you see those reviews from the time of Raiders, they had to like fucking nominate for Best Picture.
Yes.
They were like, we can't deny this, right?
Whereas
like,
this time they could because of Schindler's List.
Exactly.
If there isn't Schindler's
That's
List,
what's
do they
fascinating.
have to nominate this
I
movie?
think so.
Great question.
I would contend.
Yes.
In the way that like there were the sort of undeniables like Beauty and the Beast, where you're just like, you know what? This is a seismic enough moment in film culture. And like the audience has made their opinion heard.
Right.
I do think this gets nominated for Best Picture if Schindler isn't in the same year. And the Academy is like, great, Spielberg has made this easy for us.
You know what?
We get to split him in half.
Let me throw the question to the two of you, and Ben can answer it too. And we'll talk about Schindler's List next week on Blank Check, obviously. Do you have this over Schindler? You're doing a 1993 top 10. You're a critic. Do your top 10. I mean, obviously, you can also just do your Spielberg
How
list.
old a critic am I?
You know, you're Sean Fennessey, right? Now, I'm saying, like, do a 1993
I mean, I
list for
like
me.
this film more than Schindler's List.
So do I.
I certainly understand the magnitude and importance of Schindler's List, not just to Spielberg, but to the history of, to world history.
This is one of the most watchable movies ever made, and Schindler is a movie you have to prep yourself for.
Yeah. Well,
I'm going to argue on that episode. One of the things about Schindler's List that's kind of crazy is how fucking watchable
Very watchable
it is.
I agree,
It's very
but it is a
watchable.
movie
It is.
that you have to be like, okay, I'm ready.
No, you're not just going to be like, should we do 45 minutes of Schindler?
Right.
Like, no, for sure.
The interesting thing about that Oscar question, whether this movie would be nominated, is that this is the year that The Fugitive was nominated,
100%.
which is
Yeah.
that is the same exact
that
thing you're
is the
talking about. Where it's like
spot.
this is pure
And they're right to
Hollywood
nominate it.
entertainment, and
Yes.
it's so good we cannot not recognize
Right.
it.
How do we not recognize just the most robust kind of Hollywood filmmaking?
But like Butterfly Effect, if Schindler comes out the following year, then I think Jurassic gets Fugitive's nom in that
I
slot,
fully agree.
right?
Fully agree.
I think so.
I mean, we'll get to our final rankings. I think I put Schindler above this, but I put E.T. and Jaws and maybe Close Encounters as well above Schindler.
I would agree that those
Like,
movies are above
right.
Jurassic Park for me in the sort of like faux objective point of view. It's
Yes.
impossible for me to disentangle my relationship to movies with Jurassic Park. It's impossible.
Yeah.
But I think I do have Raiders and Jaws over Jurassic.
Mhm.
Yes.
Jaws, yes. Raiders, no.
But I do think as time goes on,
maybe you're right.
For me.
Yeah, I don't know. You know what? I'll redo my list.
And we're not
as-
even talking about AI. Like, there's a handful.
AI is my number one Spielberg.
Yeah. So, we did this bifurcated thing where we covered everything from Lost World to, at that point, what was the
BFG.
ending point? BFG? we've covered everything else that's come out since then as a catch-up episode. In that ranking, you put AI number 1.
Yeah, it's my number 1.
And I can't remember if I put AI number 1 or number 2. I might have put Catch number 1.
You love Catch.
But I also saw AI again recently, was playing at Film Forum, and I'm like, this is
I've seen AI so many times. It was such a big movie for me as a teenager, which is why I'm weird and stupid.
Huge for me when it came out.
You both put AI at number 1.
I think, you know what the difference is? We both put AI at number 1. I think you said AI is your favorite Spielberg, period.
It's my favorite Spielberg, period. What did I have at number 2, Ben?
Minority Report,
and I did
Jet Spies, Saving Private Ryan, Catch Me If You Can, and Griffin, number 2 is Catch Me If You Can.
Then
3, Bridge.
Hell yeah.
4, Tintin. 5,
That's my
Minority
fucking guy.
Report.
My thing
He's got a nose for a good story.
Lincoln is only higher.
Sure.
Lincoln is pure drugs to me.
Yeah.
Just like every time I watch that movie, I am like, this is fucking molten ecstasy. I love this so much. As Lincoln is like arguing with his wife over their dead son, I'm just like, yes!
Our son
and like
is
being
dead.
like, get me a 4th blanket. It's cold in here.
In 2022, after West Side Story, we did a top 5 Spielberg episode.
Yes.
And my top 5 was, it was me and Amanda and Joanna. And it was 5 was Minority Report, 4 was Raiders, 3 was Jurassic Park, 2 was AI, and 1 was Jaws.
Wow.
Amanda and Joanna both had Jurassic Park at number 1.
I mean, I think that's it's for our generation, it is the Spielberg movie.
Yeah.
Right?
It is.
I think so.
For the millennials.
That's the funny thing is you
disgusting
read the
millennials.
reviews.
I know you're sort of a cuspy millennial.
I'm
You're
still
kind of
officially
Jackson.
millennial, but I have some Gen X traits.
You had elder statesman critics like Pauline Kael.
Sure.
Who
She's
had
retired at this point, I think. Yeah.
I was saying had discovered Spielberg as an adult and were commenting on the later periods of Spielberg's career as an adult, right?
Right.
But the time this movie's coming out, you have a lot of critics who grew up on Jaws and are now going like, well, it's fun, but it's no Jaws. There was a lot of
and they can
comparing it
feel
to
the
Jaws.
corporateness of this movie,
And,
right?
they were like, this feels corporate, this feels diagram, this feels kind of broad.
Didn't
this
it break the record for the most corporate tie-ins?
Right.
You know,
It's like it's the beginning of not the beginning,
All
but
of
it's right at the middle, I guess, of all of it.
Right.
Yeah.
This is sort of, this movie feels strategic.
This is an entire lifestyle experience, is this movie coming out this summer.
Right. And their argument was none of this has the stickiness and depth of Jaws, which works so well as a character piece in a drama. And I'm like, you could dress up as any of the 9 human leads of Jurassic Park for Halloween and people would know who you are.
Now they would. You're
now
right.
they would. Like, and the costuming is not like super broad, but you're like,
but you're right. Like Hammond, Ellie.
Yeah. I've talked about this with the podcast The Ride Guys, where we're like, there's all this Jurassic shit. It's wild they don't have people walking around dressed like Sam Neill, because people would lose their fucking minds.
That's a good point.
Just in the blue
and it's
shirt.
not that
with
hard.
No, it's very
just doing
simple.
like a Galaxy's Edge style thing. Yeah, that would work.
Man, remember Bridge of Spies?
Yeah. Do you remember?
Absolute jack of a movie. So good.
Unbelievable.
Do you like Bridge of Spies?
Of course. I mean, he is
completely.
he is still as powerful as ever, in my opinion. West Side Story and Fablemans is it's obscene how good those movies are for where he is in his life.
Yeah. It is just the thing, too, of like everyone talks about, I was watching fucking Top. What was that sound?
Don't know.
That sounded like a ghost in the walls, did it not?
Yeah, I don't know.
Spielberg is listening.
Was that a pipe thing?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
John Hammond's spirit calling out to us. Create once more.
5 comedy points. I was watching a bunch of videos of Tom Hanks speaking at Oxford.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
This went viral a couple years ago, maybe a year or 2 ago. I just went deep onto this and talking to students and asking questions and whatever. And he was talking about how much for him he is like a director, actor, and it's all about the different collaborations. And there are multiple people he's worked with multiple times. They have very different styles, and he likes that flexibility and whatever. And they were like, what's it like working with Spielberg? And he was like, here's like the defining story of working with Spielberg is like on The Post, I had done like 4 movies with him already at that point or whatever. A lot of the other actors were really nervous about working with him. The script was so like word dense and so precise and accurate that we had to get it right. And the actors were like, Tom, can we please do a rehearsal and work on this? And it was one of the scenes where like 10 of the primary actors in the Washington Post office are all like fighting back and forth and whatever. And he was like, sure, I'll be like sort of the team captain and I'll help run all of this. And they work it and they get it word perfect and they feel good about the rhythm because he's like, Steven expects you to just show up having done your work. He's not going to hold your hand. You got to show up prepared. And they get to set and Spielberg's like, you know what might be interesting is if the shot is the man carrying the package with the Pentagon Papers, and we track him over to the desk and he drops it off. And the entire thing they had worked for like 2 days. None of them are in focus on camera at any point. He shot the entire sequence in one shot.
Right.
None of them are ever in focus. And he's like, that's the thing with Spielberg is he is like the most incredible, like multidimensional problem solver of he's just like a genius. It's innate where he gets there and he's like, what's the most important thing? What is the thing I need to convey in this scene, whether it's information or feeling?
Well, then also he just knows how to visually think about things.
Totally.
In a very, very innovative way.
Yes.
Like, even at his advanced age. It's not like he's fucking Clint Eastwood, but he's an older man.
But he's still kind of unparalleled at that.
There's so much verve to something like West Side Story.
Yes.
It would just be so easy for him to phone some of these movies in, and sometimes he does, and it's called the BFG.
For sure.
And most of the times he does not.
Very rare, though, and you know, as I know you can attest, father of 100 children. I'm the father of just one child, and I'm like, I need a sandwich and a nap most of the day.
He needs sleepy. Now, obviously, look, I had this conversation with my dear pal Caitlin about the Mets, about Lindor after his daughter was born, was like playing baseball the next day. And she's like, that's crazy.
He's an alien.
He's an alien. But I'm also like, yes, but of course he's also a wealthy athlete. He has a lot of help. True. He can get support for his family.
You did the Trap episode 5 days after your twins were born.
I did. That's breaking news.
That should go into the Hall of Fame.
Yes, that was hard.
That was hard.
But I sound okay on it.
But you had also been training for that episode for
that
like
is
6 months writing the profile.
Your whole life.
Most episodes don't get that level of preparation.
God, the stress of like, will I finish that article and see Trap and all that stuff as my anyway.
We knew Trap was so close to fucking due date.
Really close.
It's almost like you planned it.
Yeah.
God, the butcher.
But finish your point. I'm sorry.
I don't remember.
He's
my
a good
points.
dad. He was talking about Mets, the guy who played after
Lindor.
the daughter.
No. There's no point.
Okay.
I was just saying, like, Steven Spielberg has the resources at least to be a parent with lots of support, one assumes.
Oh, totally.
Like, he's not going home and being, changing every diaper. Maybe he is. Maybe Spielberg can call me out.
He's also just got more irons on the fire in his world than we do. The podcast people who are having a very calm, quiet experience in a quiet room. Like, hundreds of people are reliant upon him every day.
Yeah.
He still kind of moves mountains with his every word.
It sure seems that way. And something like The Post is a movie, obviously, that came together immediately because Spielberg decided, I think I'll do this right now. Like, some of his movies take a long time to get made.
I mean, this
Let's
post-Fableman's period,
just do it.
or even to a certain degree, post-West Side Story of him slowing way down.
Sure.
Taking long gaps now. He's finally committed to a new movie.
He's doing the David Koepp movie, right?
But that on paper sounds like a little bit more of a classical Spielberg movie.
It does kind of sound like him being like, I didn't do an event movie for the 2020s yet.
Right.
Fuck it. Why don't I?
I could not be more excited.
I'm thrilled.
Couldn't either. I mean, if we're saying Jaws is that in the 70s.
It's Josh O'Connor and...
Look, the guy cast...
I forget who the female
Emily Blunt?
Yeah.
Is it Emily Blunt, Josh O'Connor? Oh my God.
I mean, get out.
There's someone else good in that. Coleman Domingo?
Keep going. This is wonderful.
The whole thing, if you're
Sean Fennessey?
if you're just thinking of this kind of movie, right? So in the 70s, it's Jaws. In the 80s, it's Raiders. In the 90s, it's Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
I'm not even mentioning Close Encounters or E.T., other gigantic, in the 2000s, is it Minority Report? Is that the closest? Or is it War of the Worlds?
I think it's actually Catch Me If You Can.
It's kind of legacy, actually, is Catch Me If You Can.
Because that was it's not the same kind of genre thing that we're talking about, but it is in a way. It's kind of like a mouse hunt movie.
Yes.
And it was a huge hit.
But
it sure was.
Huge hit. But that's the reason why we had this idea to just do the back half of Spielberg years ago was his post-Oscar career is fascinating, and the choices he makes when he feels like he's been validated at the highest echelons. What does he have to prove anymore? And this notion in the early 2000s of oh my God, Tom Cruise and Spielberg are going to work together. That's going to be the biggest movie of all time. The two ultimate crowd pleasers. And they make two movies that are like dark and haunted.
Right. And War of the Worlds did not underperform, but Minority Report kind of did.
Bit. They both were hits, but
Minority Report is, in my opinion, like his second best movie ever. I love that movie to death.
AI, Minority Report, War of the Worlds on paper are like these classic Spielberg movie incoming.
Third best.
All three movies rule.
Mm-hmm.
But it definitely felt like they were received a little bit like, this is less fun than I thought it would be.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I mean, that's what's fascinating about his post 9/11 especially. Yeah, like he becomes tinged with darkness. And by the time, then he does Tintin and Warhorse, and you're like, oh, he's sort of doing like more of an old boy adventure thing. But Warhorse is quite a sad movie.
Yeah.
Tintin is not.
No.
And then when he does Ready Player One, that movie's a hit. Like it was an unambiguous hit. But it was kind of the first time it felt like, I think people are more interested in a different kind of product at this level now.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Like that movie went over fine.
Yeah.
But by that point, it's like, nah, people are seeing the superhero things and like that's now the sort of definitive version
and
of
Spielberg
this kind of entertainment.
and Lucas are doing interviews and saying like, hey, this whole thing's gotten out of control. The blockbusters are going to collapse. The studios are like cruising for a bruising.
Right. And of course,
he was right.
He was right. You look at those quotes and they're insane where he's like, the problem is they make $200 million a year. And when 3 of those start bombing in a year,
they're fucked.
They're fucked. They can get away with 1 bombing per year.
But what you should do is, and again, I know this episode's coming out 6 months from now or whatever, but like what you should do is make a $200 million courthouse musical.
Yeah, that's money well spent.
It is the story of Warner Brothers in 2024.
Yes.
You know, this is the summer of Furiosa and Horizon and
Joker.
You know, Joker to Folia Dick.
It's they had Beetlejuice, which was like an undeniable fucking home run for them and made for like a reasonable budget. Right. And then they made so few films. You look at like Furiosa being a thing that was largely funded by like, you know, Village Roadshow and like Australian film industry. And then like Horizon was a pickup for them. Trap was like a negative pickup for them. And then Joker was one of the only movies that they really put all their muscle behind and built themselves.
Yep. After mostly selling out on Joker. People forget that Warner Brothers divested itself of a lot of Joker because they didn't believe in that movie and then made $1 billion. Anyway, and so for Joker 2, they were all in, and then it was a pile of dog shit nobody wanted to see.
I want to tell the story quickly.
Okay. We should talk about the end of Jurassic Park. But
we should. This is a little link to the end of Jurassic Park. Talking about like Spielberg being a next level problem solver. He's making this movie around like historic hurricanes.
Yes, crazy hurricanes.
Hitting. Right. They're losing days having to like evacuate.
Right.
And I think at certain points they lost sets entirely.
Right.
And we're just like, well, I guess we just have to move on. We can't get any more days out of that location or whatever it was. But there's the story of him just trying to figure out how to get as much footage as he could. What's the latest point we can safely evacuate without wanting to put anyone's life in danger? I think being conscious of like, I can't be John Hammond, but how do I squeeze as much out of this safely? And so like he's filming while sending Kathleen Kennedy to figure out how to get people off the island onto a safer place. And she like finds her way to Honolulu, gets to the airport, is trying to find anyone who can transport the amount of people they still have. And she flags down a guy and is like, you have like a plane. Can you fly me out? Wait a second. You look familiar, don't you? And he was the fucking guy who played Jock Lindsay in Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Right.
A man who was a real life pilot.
Right.
Because they need him to fucking fly a plane on camera, and then he gets 2 lines of dialogue.
Right.
And he was like, oh yeah, no, of course I'll fly you out.
Lovely.
You took care of me, Kathy.
Wow.
Yeah. It's just crazy to think of like Jock Lindsay flying out the entire cast of Jurassic Park to safety, almost mirroring the end of this movie.
It feels like the end of the movie.
Yes.
Right.
It's weird that a movie like this that is so clearly at the absolute center of culture would have an imperiled production. You'd think that they would have just built a new soundstage that could have replicated,
but
you know.
there was nothing like that.
That's
I know.
I'm
like,
watching
even
this movie,
Spielberg making a dinosaur movie, it's like, yeah, okay, buddy, but try to keep the budget under 70 mil.
I was thinking this while watching it, where it's like, oh, this is like as big of a budget we give, but there are limits. You know, you read quotes and you're just like, no movie will ever cost $200 million. Was something people were saying in the early 2000s.
But like George Lucas being like, fuck it, I do Phantom Menace, basically self-funding it with merch sales. Like that's the beginning of like, okay, like I guess people are writing blank checks to themselves.
But yeah, exactly. Like this is still an era where the most powerful person in Hollywood making the most like slam dunk blockbuster premise and being like responsible with his days and his budget.
Is like, can I have Kurt Russell? And they're like, Kurt Russell's going to cost $1 million. Like,
Right, they're
no.
like, if you get Kurt Russell, you have to lose 20 shots of dinosaurs.
Yeah, right. We're cutting one of those raptors. Sorry, buddy.
And if you lose a location or you lose days, then you're like, I guess we cut out like Samuel L. Jackson's death scene. And he's really smart about like, okay, what's the best, most effective way to make like a gift out of a mistake? How do you make it more impactful that you don't see him die? And that's revealed later. He's still working within like boxing himself into corners.
Yeah, or kitchen counters. Should we talk about raptors in the kitchen?
Sure.
Cool sequence.
Here's a take I had.
I don't know. Like, we have largely avoided this, but like, it is hard to talk about Jurassic Park in some ways where you're like, the raptors in the kitchen is a really effective and terrifying sequence.
I just find myself saying like, this was cool, like a lot of the time watching it. This
don't-
is the mirrored, you know, when she's hiding in the sliding
best.
doors and the mirrored shot and where the raptor runs right into it. I'm just like, that's just cool.
The
That's just a
raptor
cool idea for a
bonking
movie shot.
And falling over too is so perfect. You're like, the weird clumsiness of them is sort of terrifying in a way. And the
Yes.
way you can hear their claws on the metal, where you're just like, again, you're like, this is wrong. A raptor shouldn't be in a kitchen, right? Raptors belong in 65 billion
And
years
some of
ago.
it is
Well,
so
excuse me,
obvious.
David, anyone can cook. Don't say a raptor shouldn't be in a kitchen.
That's my gusto.
Even just explaining, well, like, unless they can open doors, and then hard cut to a door handle opening, you know, like the most dumb shit, but effective, emotionally engaging filmmaking. It's so brilliant.
Here was a thought I had while watching it this time. And I don't mean to put the two franchises on the same level or put any of those films on the level of this film in particular. But I was watching it and I was just like, this sort of like haunted house, like pressure cooker, the dinosaurs here, the person's here, hanging on the silence of, as you said, like the sounds of the claw tapping and the feel of like the
raptor
pressure
barks
closing
and
in.
Yeah.
That is a thing that, like, you know, Lost World nails in that one sequence dangling over the cliff,
That
but it's
sequence is
the most supersized version of it. And it feels like the later films don't even try to really emulate. It's become an entirely different thing. I do think it's kind of the secret juice to the Quiet Place movies, is they are the best modern evocations of what works so well in Jurassic, of just like tight cast, good actors, you characterize them well, and it's just about like, you know how these creatures work? You put them in long sort of like...
One of my big problems with that franchise, which I think is like a solid... All of those movies are watchable.
I agree.
I like all. I'm a big defender of that series in part because of what Griffin is saying.
I don't think any of them are masterpieces, but that is why they work.
They're good because of the humans. I find the monsters boring and kind of boring to look at. I like how they work is fine.
But
like,
they're also trying to do the same Jurassic Park thing of like, don't show them too much. Like, show some restraint. Don't answer too much.
It's a good example of like what a digitally created creature, its limitations. Because if there was a practical version of that creature in those movies, it actually would be more effective.
It would be
even though they're
way
moving fast.
more effective. It would be so cool. And the fact that they can move supernaturally fast is lame.
I agree.
Yeah. Sorry.
What are you typing?
My wife's asking how it's going.
Must be nice.
Okay. We mentioned it, but I feel like there's so many stories about this. It's not in the dossier that the decision to have the T-Rex re-enter and sort of quote unquote have the hero moment.
I mean,
right,
this is his Godzilla
was a
moment.
later decision. And is a brilliant one, right? Where it's like, how do we deal with the raptors? How do you kill? Because like, if it just ends with them shooting raptors with shotguns, that's kind of lame.
What's smart is also you kind of show how meaningless this is.
Yeah,
you're like these dinosaurs had no specific ire for these humans,
right?
They're just sort of like out for blood. But this, like, it finally clicked for me watching it this time that it feels very Godzilla of like, you know, Godzilla starts out as like the most terrifying thing you could ever imagine happening to humanity.
Right.
And then Godzilla exists as a franchise for decades that is introduce a new monster. And the only way to solve it is for Godzilla to kill that monster.
Yeah,
and you're like,
come on.
Is Godzilla our friend? No, Godzilla's still scary. We still can't control Godzilla. But if Godzilla can knock down Hedorah, then we're fine with Godzilla.
I mean, I'm not that versed in the Godzilla movies. And I have the big Criterion booklet, thingy, right?
Yeah.
It's a beautiful
Which is such a wonderful thing.
Yes.
And as I slowly watch all of my discs, I'm like watching every disc that I've never seen before or barely remember, right? So I recently had to watch Rambo Last Blood.
Great.
Because I bought like a Rambo box set. And have you seen Rambo Last Blood?
Horrendous.
a truly like congressional inquiry level, like
I
what
agree.
the fuck happened
Wildly
here?
racist.
Yeah.
So racist.
Exceedingly unnecessarily violent.
Where you're like,
Cool.
why does Rambo have to be so racist?
Yeah.
You know what I
Very,
mean?
very confusing.
Like, even though the earlier ones are sort of like somewhat paternalistic about like the people in other countries, this one's just like, no, Mexicans are scum.
But also a franchise
weird.
that was like built on how disillusioned he was with America.
Yeah,
Also,
and then
such a contained story. It has
Yes.
nothing to do with going overseas and murdering people. It's just very strange.
because like Rambo 4,
Mhm.
right? That
Yeah.
one,
Yeah.
it's kind of bad, but like it's got like awesome throat ripping and shit. And you're
Yeah.
like, yeah,
Mhm.
this sucks, but like who cares? Rambo 5, you're like, this is like mean spirited. Like
It
this
is.
is horrible.
It
Anyway.
is.
I will one day watch all the Godzillas, but
Mhm.
my experience of Godzilla is only movies about how Godzilla is so scary.
But
You know
this-
what I mean?
This is why
Yes.
I'm making this analogy.
And
Is
you're right.
in the later films where Godzilla has to defeat a greater threat.
Yes.
Part of what I think is so fascinating about Godzilla movies is that Godzilla still remains scary.
Yes.
That it's still like, okay, he's at least like we share a common enemy,
Right.
but we can't control this thing. And this
Yeah.
thing's existence in our world is like terrifying.
Right.
And I think Spielberg nails that moment of like, there is triumph in, oh my God, great. The T-Rex is solving our problems. It's distracting the velociraptors. We can literally just drive away.
That's
But
their
it's also
that's their
scary
victory.
that they're in a fucking room with a T-Rex.
There's a difference though. Like Godzilla is, while they share this sort of like man's misshapen creation
Mhm.
origin story, Godzilla is like a vengeful god. Like he is out to take
right.
to take back what was rightfully his, to get revenge for what has been done
And
to
he's
the world.
A representation
Yeah.
of our worst, creations in the
Manifestations.
post the war.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
T-Rex is just a fucking eating monster.
Yes.
Right.
It's just, I'm hungry, get out of my way.
Yeah.
Which is way scarier. Like there's
is.
no intentionality other
No.
than like I need food in my belly.
Yeah.
So it's very satisfying, I find, when the raptors are get taken out. And shout out to that raptor that tried to jump on T-Rex's back.
He
It's a
takes a
bold
real
move.
effort. And the
Yeah.
T-Rex is
Yeah.
like, get the fuck off
He took a
of me,"
shot
and
at it.
throws him into a skeleton.
Yeah.
But the T-Rex is a power unto itself.
Yes.
Oh God, it's so
Yeah.
good.
And then the banner coming down.
the banner coming
It's just
down.
like
I mean, that's
fucking
just
chef's
Spielberg
kiss.
being like,
Yeah.
Right.
fuck you. Just made you come.
Also,
Yeah.
just like a
I'd
moment
do that anytime.
that he has the judgment to execute properly, where if anyone else did it, you'd be like, you're fucking gilding the lily here.
Right.
And it's like he just knows the right speed for the banner to fall, the timing of when it should start
And of
falling.
course, Williams' score being
Yeah.
like, I've been here. Like
Right.
we've mostly
Yes.
been chilling, but like,
Yeah.
I can pop this score again. They get in the copter. Alan's sleeping.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, by the way, Hammond, hate your park, 0 out of 10, F-. And he's
Yeah.
like, agree. See you later.
You end on Laura Dern quietly processing everything, looking at everyone,
everyone walks
digesting. It's all on her face.
Everyone walks out so happy.
Yeah.
Who walks out of this movie unhappy?
But like this movie just settles itself. It's like, you know
Yes.
what they need to do? They need to leave the island. The second they're in the helicopter, 2 lines of dialogue, 3 maximum.
Yeah.
And then it's just looks. There's no like John Hammond holding a press conference announcing his apology to the world.
Right.
Remind me, how does the book end? Isn't there like more about what they do to the island? Am I misremembering
The
that?
island like falls apart more significantly. Like there's like a fire from what I'm right.
Okay.
Like it's like the island is more powerfully destroyed, and like Malcolm is still on it. And I think they like fucking napalm it. Or
That
something.
was
they,
what I
they,
thought.
Like,
That's
blow
what
it up.
they destroyed.
And that's why you're like, Malcolm's dead. And that's why when then they told Crichton, like, write a sequel, buddy. It better be called Jurassic Park 2 and it better have dinosaurs in it. And he was like, I don't write sequels. And
Ian
they were
Malcolm.
like, yes,
Yeah.
you do.
Yeah.
Like they cock a shotgun.
Here's a $5 million machine gun. Yeah.
And they're like, by the way, Jeff Goldblum completely rocked in that movie, so he's the star of the next one. And he's like, I killed that character off. And they're like, undo it.
Yeah.
And in the sequel novel, he's just like, yeah, I didn't die. What?
Yeah.
Who cares?
I survived the
I just
napalming.
dodged the napalm, I guess. But the novel also ends with some kind of like clever, kind of movie-esque report of like, and then weird reports of like odd migrating animals in Costa
Yeah.
Rica,
Right.
like behaving unusually, and you're
It's
like,
just
okay,
so
they got
refreshing that this
out. and they
movie-
don't do that here.
This
Right.
movie doesn't like feel the need to tie up any loose ends. It doesn't feel the need to set up new threads for sequels to pick on. It just ends because the humans have made it off the island. It's over. Like, which, by the way, Jaws does as well. Like, Jaws is just like the shark's dead, movie over.
100%. Let's
we don't
swim
have to
off.
show them getting back to land,
No.
hugging their wives.
Both franchises inspired several unnecessary, often uninspired sequels.
So
Right.
this, I think, is a fascinating quote from Premiere Magazine, May 1997, when Lost World is coming out. Spielberg said, I didn't think it was a perfect film, and it wasn't so close to my heart that I need to protect the integrity of a follow-up by preventing anyone else from doing one, which I certainly had the right to do. Among the films that I really think are good movies and that I've directed, it's not even in the top 5. But there was such an outpouring of demand from the public, thousands and thousands of letters, and so after all those years of denying them the sequel to E.T., which he famously considered and developed,
But was also like, I can't find a way into that.
Right.
Yeah.
I couldn't face the same 9-year-old now saying, okay, so you're not going to make a sequel to E.T. I understand how personal it was to you. So why are you not making the sequel to Jurassic Park? And I had no answer to that.
Right.
That because this movie was kind of just like pure exercise for him, he was like, well, there's nothing like sacred that I don't want to touch upon. The only other thing he sequelizes himself is Indiana Jones,
Right.
which is designed to be a franchise.
Right.
And part of Lucas like bringing him on was you have to commit to make 3. I want these to be ongoing. But he steps away from Jaws. He like kills his own E.T. sequel. This is the only other time that he does it.
Do some show lore for me right now. What is your version of The Lost World? What is the thing that you've thousands of letters about that people desperately want you to do?
Oh.
Another
on a
performance
And you're like,
review.
I guess, for the money?
It's another performance review.
Oh, let's do one.
Yeah.
Of what?
But we haven't found the right thing. In the early days of the show, when we were purely a podcast about the Star Wars prequels, we started doing a thing called the performance review, where we would go through every cast member and rate them pass or fail to judge whether or not the acting was good in those movies. And then we did it again for the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe on Patreon.
Yeah, an episode where we fight with Chris Cuthert about The Last Jedi for an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we also find a very convincing Sebastian Stan lookalike on Reddit who
The
does porn.
discoveries in those episodes are great.
Yes.
Okay.
And people are often looking for when will there be another thing they have covered in its entirety that
Sure.
feels well suited for a performance review. We're also arguing about the performances of like the 80th credited actor is still interesting.
Okay.
Right.
And I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I don't know. Jurassic Park?
Like you could zoom out and do whole Jurassic franchise, but I
Yeah.
don't.
I mean, it's the Fast movies, is it not?
Well, if we cover the Fast movies, I argue we almost have to do a performance review.
And it's so perfect for that because there are a lot of like, oh, I forgot about Cole Hauser. You know, I forgot about like
right.
this guy who's only in a couple of them or whatever.
Yeah.
I
I feel like that's the one I see
all
people
lunch
ask.
orders. Obviously, everyone's always demanding that one.
That's our
Psychotic.
That's our ET2 Night Skies. That's the one that people think they want, and they should be thanking us for never doing
What's
it.
that on the rewatchables? Because you guys did Pulp Fiction. So what is it now?
Probably Almost Famous, though. For
You've
the
never
CR
done Almost Famous?
No.
Why?
And Juliette Littman, who I've worked with for many, many years, has said if she is not included in that episode, she will immediately leave the company when it is
Interesting.
published.
Wow.
So
Wow.
that's a bold threat that she's made. I don't know. There's probably a couple of other. Sicario for Chris.
Oh, sure.
Well, you got to
Yeah,
do that.
Chris is waiting for Sicario. He has
Yeah.
not received it yet. He's waiting for his night vision goggles.
But I'm wondering is there a movie that people have been waiting, like a singular film?
From you guys.
Yeah, because it's different with like the director prism, where people are like, I want this whole series.
Lynch was a huge one. So
Lynch
like, what's
was
the
huge.
next huge one after that?
I mean,
PTA.
PTA.
yeah. I mean,
Wes.
there's the obvious tier of like PTA, Wes, Tarantino. Then there are the sort of personal, like people want to hear David go ham on Peter Weir, me go ham on 70s Altman,
Mm-hmm.
Ben go ham on Ernest Dickerson.
Yeah, man. Bones.
Bones, baby.
Bones back in the news here in October. You know, people are watching Bones again. They're digging it.
Bones
Are they?
Tober.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah,
No,
Bones
I
is
just
back.
Okay, great. I love it.
Was it a porch movie, Bones?
Yeah.
Was it a porch movie? You think that thing was watching doors?
awesome.
You think there was a fucking roof over Ben's head when he was watching Bones?
Fan of Bones.
I said, fetch me another blanket. I've got more bones to watch.
This movie was a very big hit.
It
made
opened June
11.
11th,
Yeah.
1993. $50
Yeah.
million,
Mhm.
which I think was a record at the time.
Mhm.
It grossed, well, wait a second, because I
What?
don't want to get fooled here by the re-releases or whatever. It grossed
Okay.
about $350 million
Yeah. that sounds
domestic.
right.
It's
Yeah.
now at 415 and
Yeah.
$1 billion worldwide.
Wild.
I think it was slightly under for its original release.
That
It's
was
been re-released several
A
times.
big push in the 2010s when they started re-releasing American blockbuster classics in 3D. was like get these movies back in American theaters, but also foreign markets were not as developed.
Right. Now
Titanic,
a ton of money in China.
Never got to play in Asia. Like all these things.
This is a version of the kind of hidden money of Hollywood that there is. It's like constantly churning up an extra $50-75 million against these properties.
They did the 20th anniversary Jurassic 3D, which, by the way, I think that conversion is quite good. And the Jaws 3D conversion is also quite good. Unsurprisingly, the way that Spielberg just shoots and blocks and edits things works pretty seamlessly in 3D because he just builds that kind of depth into his compositions and isn't frenetically, cutting in a way that would disorient you. The 3D re-release made like 40 million here and made like 400 million everywhere else.
Yes, it was just short of the domestic record. E.T. kept the domestic record at 359.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But it beat it worldwide.
Got it.
And Spielberg, as you say, does agree to do the sequel because he's almost like, I don't give a shit about Jurassic Park, which is kind of interesting.
And I also think you're right that like in spending 4 years building DreamWorks, he needs the guarantor of like, I need to remind everyone that I'm Steven Spielberg before I go off and start making some weirder things.
I think Lost World's a very flawed movie, but it does have very effective sequences and some fun casting.
Yeah.
I think Jurassic Park 3 is tons of fun, but disposable. I think all of the world movies are quite bad, but the J.A. Bayona one...
Excuse me. Show some respect for our guest here. Thank you.
But the J.A. Bayona one has the only good idea, really, of all of them, which is the haunted house sequence is sort of fun.
It has sequences. Yeah.
I had J.A. on the big picture for that movie because I love to interview. I had Fede Alvarez on for Romulus because I love to interview filmmakers like that when they get put in the franchise chair. Mm-hmm. And I agree. Like he brought The Orphanage to Jurassic Park.
And that's just the one time where you're like, this is something.
It's a take. Like, he had a take. It's not totally effective, but there are things about that movie I like.
I mean, I think if they had hired J.A. Bayona to develop his own Jurassic movie from scratch, I probably would like that movie. That movie is torn between two poles of this weird franchise management of the idea of the sanctity of the Jurassic World trilogy and just letting a fun director make a fun dinosaur movie.
Society of the Snow, that was good.
Yeah,
Dominion is like a completely insane film.
It's almost like
it's
incoherent.
Dominion, Dominion is so incoherent. It's sort of astonishing. Still made $1 billion.
Yeah.
Jurassic Park opened number 1. What's number 2, Griffin? Can you just tell me?
In June 1993.
Yes.
What's number 2? Is it a new release? Has it been out for a while?
It's been out for 3 weeks. It is a star-driven action film that is good.
Is it Lethal Weapon 3?
No.
Okay.
No, it's not.
It's not The Fugitive?
Nope.
Okay. Distributor, please?
Sony, Columbia.
Star-driven. It's not
high concept,
In the Line of Fire?
Nope.
Star-driven.
It's a big star.
A sort of a minted star, a recent star?
Minted star, kind of an aging star, but this is his last gasp, I think, of true A-list stardom. He makes some very fun action pictures in the early 90s before becoming a parody of himself. He was always a parody of himself, but truly.
Is it Cliffhanger?
It's Sylvester Stallone in Cliffhanger, the Rennie Harlan film.
I'd argue that's his last, a studio blockbuster.
Demolition Man is the same year.
Uh-huh.
And I would agree that's the end of him being in fun, good movies, right?
Yeah.
Would you agree, Sean?
You peep that Demolition Man Arrow box set, David?
I have a soft spot for Walter Hill's A Bullet in the Head.
Mm.
That's later, but sure.
A film I like. There are not a lot of films from the next 30 years of his career that I like.
That's arguably him pivoting to being a bit of a B-movie star.
Yes.
After being one of the most titanic movie stars who could get anything made at any budget level.
Cliffhanger, though, excellent.
Yeah.
Very enjoyable.
Cliffhanger is very fun.
Cliffhanger and Demolition Man rock, and then it's The Specialist, Judge Dredd, Assassins, Daylight, which is sort of okay. The other ones I just mentioned are not. Yeah. Copland is him being like,
very good.
What do you think? And then,
but then when he doesn't get an Oscar nomination, he's like, then thank you, I won't try that. Yeah. Right. That's a bad run.
And then he goes straight to DVD, and then he's back as Rambo. Jesus, talking a lot of Stallone. Okay, number 3 at the box office is a comedy.
Okay.
Sort of an odd couple comedy.
Is it House? No. I was putting out the one.
Sitter?
Well, I was like,
Neither
guest or
guest
sitter.
nor
House
sitter.
guest?
No. It is. So it's not really. You know what? It's not really. Okay.
Oh, so the hint was wrong. It's not really.
The thing about me calling it an odd couple comedy is it is that sort
loaded.
of. But you know what the movie is?
Yeah.
Yes. It's the stars became a couple, and there's a very famous thing that happened involving them that was sort of sanctioned internally because they were a couple, but is now something you hear about and your jaw hits the floor.
In the history of this show, this is one of the funniest movies to try to guess.
I know. Even
Can you restate what you just
It's
said?
like so the two stars of this movie, I believe, became a couple, right? Did they start
They did.
because of this movie?
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Might
Not sure.
have predated that, but yes, they were
And
together.
one of the male star then did something, not for film, but he did something that was seen by people.
That's sort of a promotional act.
And it's something that you're not supposed to do. It's an offensive thing.
Two huge stars at the time.
But he kind of, quote unquote, could do it back then because he was dating the woman here.
oh my god!
I think that's what
Wait,
you know.
Really?
What the fuck? And you know
is
what
so
it is?
good.
It's not Hugh Grant or Eddie Murphy.
No.
It's a TV star whose movie career was not nothing, but like he never quite was a movie star.
He got permission because
Permission is, to
Okay.
be clear, kind of strong
Okay.
because what he
Okay.
did is not good.
I have solved it.
Yes.
The film is called Made in America.
That is correct.
And you are speaking of Ted Danson's Friars Club
In
roast
blackface.
speech
Correct.
to tribute his then girlfriend Whoopi Goldberg, who he had left his wife who was in a coma for. Was that right? Didn't he have a wife who was gravely ill?
I'm not sure about that part, although it's possible.
Yeah.
It's just funny that
Everything about
Ted
yeah.
Danson, I feel like, is now just such a beloved
Yes.
celebrity, right?
Yes.
Like actor too, good
Yes.
actor, really an iconic TV person. But his partnership with Mary Steenburgen is so beloved.
Yeah.
And then, like, if you go back, you're like, oh, some bumps in the road here.
Those photos are astonishing of
Yeah.
him in the full getup and Whoopi like clapping.
like he was in like minstrel blackface. Like
Yes.
it wasn't just like they like tanned his skin or like he's like it's a parody, I guess,
This
of
also was
blackface.
not-
But it's,
that was-
when you see pictures of it, you're like, what the fuck is going on? It's
Yeah.
Ted Danson.
This was not like a Kentucky Fairgrounds event in 1958. This
No.
is 1993
Yep.
that this happened.
He is
Insane.
just ending his run as the star of the most beloved sitcom in the world.
Crazy thing that happened.
Like 11 seasons of triumph.
But now that's right. I was struggling with Made in America. 'Cause Made in America is like, what is it? It's that like
Made in
her-
America is
there's
that
a DNA test, and is she related to Ted
no,
Danson?
no. It's Will Smith is her son.
Right, and Ted
And they're
Danson
trying to
was
identify who the sperm donor was.
Right, so it's sort of an odd couple
And he's
comedy.
like a huckster used car salesman. Is that right?
Yeah, he's like oh my God, I got a cowboy hat. And
Right.
she's like, what? I'm Whoopi Goldberg.
Right.
We're so different.
He wants to meet his dad, and then they meet, and they don't get along, and then they do fall in love.
I've never seen it.
It's also it's just.
It's
Is
a
it
Richard Benjamin movie.
Will Smith's first movie?
Is that so?
It's certainly his first
I
significant.
think it's after
role.
6 Degrees of Separation.
Interesting.
Maybe right before it.
Yeah.
It's the same year.
Wow.
I'm not
Yeah.
sure which came out first. It's right before it.
Just a reminder, this film made $100 million at the box office.
Made in America made $104 million worldwide.
Wow.
50 at least in America. And Richard Benjamin, it's one of those guys where it's like Richard Benjamin made some big movies. Like he made hits. He made My Favorite Year. He made like Mermaids, right? But he also made like some true stinkers.
Yeah. Richard Benjamin's
profound
star
stinkers.
of Westworld.
Star of Westworld, but
Yeah.
also director of Marcy X.
I enjoy Milk Money,
Oh, I've never seen that.
where real classic hooker with a heart of gold
Yeah.
formulation starring
Melanie
Melanie
Griffith.
Griffith,
Ed
and some
Harris?
young boys and Ed
Yeah.
Harris.
He's
Charming film.
Very good in Last of Sheila. Richard Benjamin.
Yeah, no, he's a good actor.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Married to one of my all-time crushes, Paula Prentice. Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay.
So that's number 3.
That's a wild movie.
Yep.
Mhm.
Number 4 at the box office is not a movie I am that familiar with.
Hmm.
It is from Disney, but
Okay.
it is a grown-up legal thriller.
So was it a
from-
Touchstone, a Hollywood Pictures release? What do we?
It
what do we
looks like
think
it was Hollywood Pictures,
Okay.
and starring 2, real R-rated actors. You know what I mean?
I've
Like,
just seen this for the first time this year.
you know what this movie is?
I do. I've
It's
seen
not-
it, and there's a reason why I saw it, related to an episode that we
Yes,
did.
it's from a director
Legal
who's
draft.
quite
Yeah.
a big deal
Okay.
to you, but also to Hollywood. a great director, but is also a director who made 1 billion movies. So sometimes
Is it a Lumet?
It's a Sidney Lumet movie.
Okay.
You know what I mean by two actors where it's like if they're in a movie, the movie is rated R. Those two stars.
1,000,000%.
Yes.
Is it?
They don't show up for PG.
What's this movie called? Guilty as Sin?
Correct.
That's it.
Don Johnson and Rebecca De Mornay in Guilty as Sin, written by Larry Cohen.
Mm-hmm.
How is it?
Unworthy of the talent surrounding it.
Right.
Sure. It's a real B movie.
And it's like
with
in an era
A-class talent.
of 90s erotic thrillers and stuff, right?
Also easily the schlockiest looking Lumet movie. Very out of shape relative to what he normally did.
Interesting.
I love, Don Johnson absolute flames this year in Rebel Ridge. That guy is probably making my ballot. Well, have you seen Rebel Ridge?
No, his last 10 years have quietly been on fire.
I feel like he's one of those guys where he's kind of like Brandon Nimmo. I'm just like, I don't want to hear a thing about who you vote for or why. Yeah. I just want you to give fantastic workmanlike performances on screen.
I don't want to be
villains.
reminded of the things I already know about you.
I love you so much in movies, and I don't want to think about anything else. Thank you very much.
He has very comfortably settled into I'm just a shitheel in everything, and it works every time.
I feel like it kind of starts with Eastbound and Down, where you're like, who is Kenny's dad going to be? And then the reveal, you're like, that's weirdly perfect.
Yes,
he's in on the joke. And then he's just had this really good run since then. He's great in Knives Out. Wow.
Anyway,
you watched every Lumet for that episode?
I did.
What do you put at the absolute bottom?
The last of the blah 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 hot shots with
last of the mobile hot shots.
Yeah, with James Coburn.
That's your dead last. Okay,
it's terrible.
I've never seen that. I love Lumet.
Bye Bye Braverman is like not as hard to watch.
I have a lot of blind spots. I'm probably holding more against it because of context. Gloria for me feels like
it's really
the
bad.
pit.
It's so pointless.
And why did you do this?
So pointless. Yeah, he's got some real stinkers.
Yeah. But
he
also,
does.
10 of the greatest movies
top
ever
10
made.
is
it's
incredible.
Incredible.
He made a lot of fucking movies. Number 5 at the box office came up on our draft that we did recently with Sean. A comedy.
Our president draft.
That's
Correct.
right.
Is it the movie Dave?
It's the movie Dave.
The best president movie ever made, in my opinion.
A very, very fun film that was a very solid hit. You've also got in the top 10 Menace to Society. I recently watched my Criterion 4K of that.
Congratulations.
An incredibly impressive film that is so, so, so upsetting and dark. You've got Life with Mikey.
Yeah, that's
which
Michael
is,
J. Fox.
Michael J. Fox, right?
As a child talent agent. David Krumholtz's debut film.
Oh.
Friend of the show.
Never seen. You've got Hot Shot Part 2.
I don't think that's the title. Do you want
Shots
to take a
Part
second
2?
take on that?
Hot Shots Part 2.
Yeah.
Do you want me to do it like that?
Yeah. If Ben's giving it a thumbs up, I'm also giving it a thumbs up.
I've seen both Hot Shots movies, but not in a long time, and I cannot remember which is which.
I've seen Hot Shots Part 2 probably 15 times, and I think Hot Shots one time.
Hot Shots
Same,
Part
Griff.
2 is the one where he's got the chicken on the poster.
It's the Rambo.
Right.
Yes.
And Hot Shots 1 is more of like a Top Gun thing.
Hot Shots 1 is straight up Top Gun, and Hot Shots Part 2 is everything.
It's just action movies.
This is the number one American film featuring the word "duh" in the title, and number 2 is Joker fully a duh.
Okay,
Very
what was the final domestic gross on Hot Shots Part 2, and will Joker have outgrossed it by the time this episode comes out?
I think it will, because the final gross is 38. And as much as Joker 2 is underperforming, it's underperforming in the Marvels sense.
It opened to 37.
Right.
Yeah.
Number 9 at the box office is another erotic thriller of some renown at this point, Sliver, the William Friedkin. Sorry, that's the Philip Noyce movie. William Friedkin is Jade.
Right.
Jade is unhinged. Sliver is bad. That's what it is.
Sliver is Billy Baldwin?
Yes, and a Joe Esterhaus script, and Sliver is awful.
Right. I'm ready for a reclamation.
But everyone's reclaiming every piece of 90s erotica trash right now. Yeah. And some of them, like Jade, you're like, Jade has juice. Mm-hmm. Jade is a flawed movie.
Also inspires one of the greatest jokes in movie history.
40-year-old version.
Be like David Caruso and Jade.
Caruso's amazing in Jade.
Did you know that Sliver is based on an Ira Levin novel?
Yes, I did. And I recently watched Sliver. I do not know why. I cannot remember what I was thinking watching that movie, but it's...
Doesn't it have a good idea about surveillance?
Yes, it's William Baldwin is the head of the apartment building, and he can has cameras that look at people, and there's this sort of voyeurism thing
that
going
is a
on.
good idea.
Worked for The Dark Knight and Morgan Freeman, you know? It's good
no
enough for him.
Questions asked.
Not good enough for Sliver?
Helps him catch the Joker.
Yeah. To go full circle back, Talking about Jurassic being like the blockbuster that people are still trying to chase, I think the only 3 things since then that have similarly made Hollywood go like, how do we replicate that, are The Dark Knight, Avengers, and Endgame.
Right.
And in all cases, every time they tried to follow it, danger.
I think there are some caveats to that.
Okay.
I think Lord of the Rings, Avatar, and Twilight are all so
Those are great
influential
takes.
in particular
Yes.
ways. Maybe not quite the same where Jurassic Park just felt like it ate America for 6 weeks.
Yes.
But those 3 movies I always think of because there have been so many, there is no Game of Thrones without Lord of the Rings. There is no...
Lord of the Rings is at the tippy top of influence for sure.
But here's the other thing. Outside of Avatar, all of those are adapting huge pre-existing material that has existed in the culture for decades, whereas...
Avatar was adapting Ferngully, so that's pretty huge too.
The fact that Jurassic Park is like, here's this book that came out, the movie's going to be out in 6 months.
Right.
Is very different.
Speaking of adapting huge material, number 10 at the box office, of course, is Rocky Morton and Annabelle Jankel's great Super Mario Brothers, in which Bob Hoskins looks like he wants to die every minute he's on screen, and John Leguizamo is having fun.
Isn't the story that John Leguizamo on set was like, you ever play the game? And Bob Hoskins was like, what game?
No, it's better than that. The story on set is that they were all drinking heavily, is what Leguizamo and Hoskins say particularly. Yeah. No, there's this amazing clip of Hoskins being like, oh, I told my kids, got Super Mario Brothers.
Right.
And my kids were like, oh, the game. And he's like, what game? And they showed me this game, and they see this guy going, bing, bing. And I was like, I played King Lear. And I'm like, what the fuck is this? And it's so funny.
Did you get that box set?
No, should I? That movie is really so ingrained in my heart because I saw it as a kid and was just like, I love this, which is so insane because obviously it does no effort at really adapting what those games are like.
Look, our friend Patrick Williams did a really good video that was like...
It's a hostile movie.
Yeah, let people make sloppy adaptations again.
Right.
It was like, don't we have a certain romanticism for the era where people didn't care about the material?
Well, not just the era where they didn't care, but where studios were like, it better not resemble that video game in any way.
Right.
And they're like, yeah, no, we want to do like a steampunk lizard movie.
Studios
and they're like,
would
sounds good.
Buy a beloved thing and be like, now obviously this thing is for losers and virgins.
And Illumination.
Don't make anything that resembles it.
Right. They're like, yeah, we need this movie to have gears and bombs and shit. And then like now Illumination makes Super Mario Brothers, and that movie basically is just like sucking your dick all day about like, don't you love fucking Toad? And I'm just like, I don't care about Toad.
I'm dreading the day my daughter discovers Princess Peach. Like, it is fucking curtains. That day happens. It's gonna be Princess Peach all day.
Yeah, because Princess Peach is tough because like I know they empower her now and she's an adventurous character and
girl
stuff,
boss
but, like,
Princess
she's
Peach.
wearing a pink ass dress. Her name is Princess Peach.
Yeah.
And she talks like this. Like it's tough to kind of.
She's the witch from The Witch, you know, and you tell her.
Yeah.
Oh God,
Furiosa is Princess Peach.
I do like Super Mario Brothers, the movie. I do like it.
That's a film.
I like it.
Yeah.
And Samantha Mathis is really hot in it.
Yeah.
And Dennis Hopper's having fun. Yeah, we're done. We're done.
Yeah,
we're done. We did a long time on Jurassic Park.
It was
wonderful.
Great. Hey, I want to shout out one thing at the end here.
Please.
The video game on Sega Genesis.
Video game is fun.
I don't think I played that. What was the idea?
It's a platformer, right? You know, it's a
side scroll.
Yeah,
side scroll.
Yeah.
You could play as Dr. Grant or as a velociraptor.
Okay, that's
What?
cool.
Yes,
Just
that's
sick.
right.
Yeah.
What was your mission if you were a raptor? To eat kids?
I think you were just basically fighting other dinosaurs.
Okay.
It pretty much was like the same character you could just swap out.
Okay.
Do you know what I'm saying? You would have different like fighting techniques.
Better.
Or what
I
have
always
you.
ask this when I talk about 90s games. Better or worse than the Simpsons arcade game?
Well, that's the best game ever made.
Is that not the greatest experience you had as a kid playing an arcade game?
I think.
But I had the Simpsons Bart versus the Evil Mutants game.
Yeah.
That is
Impossible.
so fucking hard.
Yes.
I don't think I played
It's
that.
like if Super Ghouls and Ghosts was harder. Like it's so difficult. And I must have played that first level a million times just because I was like, this is a Simpsons video game. I'm enjoying
Was
this.
that on Genesis?
I think it was initially on like the Master System. Maybe I had it on a Game Gear.
Can I talk about the toys for 1 minute?
Yep. And then we're done.
Yeah. Much like the bidding war for the rights to the movie itself, when the book went on the market, everyone was fighting for the toys, and then they got the rights, and then they were like, wait, what did we just buy? What is proprietary? Anyone can make dinosaurs. You don't need a license for that.
Right.
And is one of the smartest strategic branding things. Kenner and Hasbro held onto the license for like 25 years until eventually Mattel took it away in the Jurassic World sequels. But their big innovation was come up with a logo, which was the JP stamp. Do you remember this?
Yep.
All the dinosaur toys had this logo that was like a J and a P combined. And the ads were all like, look for the JP to know it's a real Jurassic Park toy. They created this attitude of, yeah, sure, you could go to a museum and buy a fucking figure of a T-Rex. But if you don't have the JP stamp on the schoolyard, that's not the real thing. It was really, really smart. But also, this movie was so fast-tracked that they started making the toys of the human characters without any reference material. So this is what Wayne Knight looked like.
Right. That's an icon.
That's
know
my
about
favorite
that.
example.
That he looks like an action
All of them
man,
are really
yes.
funny. And then like a year later, they went back around and made them look a little more accurate. But that's the best one. Yeah.
That's really funny. Jurassic Park. Sean, thank you.
Any final thoughts?
Yes.
I'm just, I always feel blessed to be able to pod with you guys.
Oh, come on.
You know, I really,
Get the fuck out of
Everyone
here.
should obviously listen to the big picture and to the rewatchables.
Thanks.
I set my clock to it. It stabilizes my week.
I think it's just a shame we're not on the same coast, you know?
It
I feel
is.
like it's
Moved to
nice
New
to be
York,
here.
baby.
You've built a very special space.
We like our space.
I'd like to doff my cap to Ben for all the fine work he's done in crafting this space.
Ben really
so
is
much.
the homemaker.
Some
of Blank Check.
innovations
Yeah.
in this performance style. You know, I've made a pod or two in my time, and not quite in this formulation that we're in right now. And now I'm going to take it back to me to the great city of Los Angeles and say, hey, at Blank Check Productions, they might be onto something.
We will, because we'll post pictures sometimes of us recording. People are like, why are the desks so far apart? I've always imagined most photos I've seen of podcasts where everyone's crammed around one table. And that's what we always were back in the day when we were at other studios and other networks. And then coming out of the pandemic, we recorded in Ben's living room.
And
where
were
we
sort of
had
far
to like
apart.
assemble and deassemble equipment very quickly. And our beloved editors started giving you notes and being like, you know what? If you moved further apart, if you went to these corners, if you had furniture relative to this, it was sort of a long exploratory process that landed on Ben realizing this works, right? Yeah.
It's fantastic. What a pleasure. Jurassic Park.
Jurassic Park.
Does it get any better? Is it better or worse to do just a truly 5-star masterpiece?
I think the best episodes are like Rollerball. Like I think the episode to do
Sometimes,
that's most fun as a guest is usually just some absolute dog shit.
Yeah.
But Jurassic Park is fun to talk about.
Yeah.
Like I think if you were doing Raiders, that'll be hard. Who's doing Raiders?
Well, let's not say it in case
But
something
I
changes.
know who wants to do it.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'll come back for like Quintet.
Yeah, that's
Hey,
what you
man.
want to do. You want to put your name down for Quintet?
That's the chess one?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've never seen that.
Arctic human chess.
Yeah.
So you still get to do Paul Newman, which I love.
Yeah.
And then just the fiasco of fiascos from my favorite.
Right.
Yes.
And
No,
Paul
that's a
Newman
great
did
call.
like 3 fiascos with Altman, but that's number
He
one.
did 2. He did Buffalo Bill and Quintet
right.
back to back.
Right.
And on paper, it's like, oh, how cool. Paul Newman knows that he should work with Robert
Right.
Altman. and then does
Anti-Western and like
Yeah.
sci-fi concept movie. And it's like
arguably his 2 worst films.
Could be.
Yeah.
Could be.
Buffalo Bill is really boring. I've seen that
It
one.
is so boring.
Yeah. You know what's really boring?
Quintet.
Quintet.
But I'm imagining the riffs and the bits in the Quintet pod.
Quintet.
Yeah.
Quintet. I'm calling it Quintet. That should be the thing that children are writing us letters demanding we do.
Quintet. Well, now Sean will be on it. So.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Don't have to do the credits, Griff.
I know. No, I know. I wasn't going to do that. I was going to say something different. Thank you for being here, Sean.
Thanks, guys.
Tune in next week for Schindler's List, and a movie that will hopefully be easy enough to talk about.
I think so. I think we're going to have a guest who feels very strongly about that movie and has a lot to say.
Yeah.
And is a friend of ours.
Okay. And as always, we were so preoccupied wondering if we could make this episode over 3 hours. We didn't consider whether or not we should make this episode over 3
I
hours.
agree with that.
Wait, where's Marie?
You want her here? Just like in a box? We just bring her out?
I've not met Marie.
Wow.
You should meet Marie.
You should meet Marie.
What the hell? I think I was sitting in the same row as her at the screening of Queer that I was at.
She was
And I was
definitely-
going to say
she was
something.
definitely
and I
should have said
didn't.
hi.
Big-
So, but wait, this is interesting. Talk about our listeners assuming we're all crowded around one small table.
Marie has
you
like a
listen
job.
to the show and think that Marie's just in the corner of the episode, even though
don't.
she doesn't talk. Sometimes it happens.
I love Marie
Marie
episodes.
rules.
Marie episodes, I eagerly look forward to them. So I was hoping she would be sitting in the room.
Next time, let's get Marie in here for you.
Yeah.
I don't know, or let's all hang out.
I'm getting on a plane now,
I
so
know
it's
you
not
are.
possible.
Next time.
You literally have your
I
bags.
brought my
You
bags.
brought your
Yes,
bags.
you're going to JFK.
I am.
You're taking the helicopter?
You're going to have to explain to me what's the best way to get there from here. So
Blank Check with Griffin and David is hosted by Griffin Newman and David Sims. Our executive producer is me, Ben Hosley. Our creative producer is Marie Barty Salinas. And our associate producer is AJ McKeon. This show is mixed and edited by AJ McKeon and Alan Smithy. Research by JJ Birch. Our theme song is by Lane Montgomery and the Great American Novel, with additional music by Alex Mitchell. Artwork by Joe Bowen, Ollie Moss, and Pat Reynolds. Our production assistant is Minnick. Special thanks to David Cho, Jordan Fish, and Nate Patterson for their production help. Head over to blankcheckpod.com for links to all of the real nerdy shit. Join our Patreon, Blank Check Special Features, for exclusive franchise commentaries and bonus episodes. Follow us on social at Blank Check Pod. Subscribe to our weekly newsletter, Checkbook, on Substack. This podcast is created and produced by Blank Check Productions.